Well, hi there. My name is Clint LOVES. I have a PhD in biology as well as a master's degree and an undergraduate degree in biology and in zoology. I run a biology outreach called Clint's Reptile Room in Springville, Utah. I'm a university instructor and online instructor of animal biology here on the YouTube channel Clint's Reptiles, which is where you are right now. And until about a week ago, I had never been on TikTok. But people keep telling me that I had to check it out. And though I think that TikTok is a poison on our society, heck, I've already reviewed 2 Who Would Win books. How much worse can TikTok possibly be? So let's take a look at some animal content on TikTok. Mr. Jason, what do you have for me?
So we have 4 categories. We have scary animal encounters, amazing animal abilities, unidentified animals, and, because you love them, gorillas.
All right. So what's up first?
Let's just go in that order. Scary animal encounters.
Okay.
So for each video, could you tell us kind of some background on what's going on in the video and how much danger were they really in?
All right. Okay, so this is the first one. TikTok. Ooh. I want to see that one more time. Okay, this is a person on a motorcycle getting charged by a tiger. As far as how much danger they're in, so much danger. So much danger. I want to go to Asia. So we last year, Will and I went to the Peruvian Amazon for 2 weeks and just documented all the things we could find. And like the Amazon isn't a perfectly safe place. There were black caiman, there's green anacondas, there's bushmasters and various other venomous snakes. There's jaguars. There are malaria. There's lots of things that could potentially kill you there. But really, at no point did I feel like I was in terrific danger. And I've been thinking I want to do the same thing in Thailand because that'd be a whole different world of amazing rainforest creatures. But then when we were recently down talking to Chandler from Chandler's Wildlife, he was telling us about when he was in Thailand, and he mentioned concern about tigers. And I started thinking about that. I'm like, ooh, tigers. That's some next level stuff. And I started researching more because it's like there are mountain lions here. And I'm careful with my kids and stuff when we're on hikes to always stay together, things like that. But I'm not, they're the thing I'm the most worried about, but I'm not terribly concerned about mountain lions because they don't actually kill that many people. So my question was like, how many people are actually killed by tigers? Because if it's like 30 people a year, it's like, well, they're in multiple countries with over 1 billion people in them. Like that can happen. I can live with 30 people. So I started looking it up, and the best number comes from a study that was conducted between the years 1800 and 2009. So this is like 209 years worth of data. But the number of people was 373,000. which is about 1,800 people a year every year. There's one female tiger killed over 400 people. Going back to the video, also for the record, tigers run 30 to 40 miles an hour. So some of them have been collected almost 50 miles an hour. That's bonkers. The thing is, like, if you get attacked by a mountain lion, A, you're a very intimidating thing for a mountain lion to attack. And B, you've actually got a shot in a fight with a mountain lion of probably not killing it, but people have killed mountain lions with their bare hands, but probably not killing it, but at least putting up a big enough fight that the mountain lion reconsiders. With a tiger, the only reason you don't get killed by a tiger is simply because the tiger has decided not to kill you, or you were not detected by a tiger. If a tiger attacks you, like, you're probably going to die. And I've seen them jump up and try to pull people off of the faces of elephants. Right? They're sitting on an elephant and they charge the elephant front on and leap up at the people on the elephant's back. Anyway, tigers are terrifying. I'm genuinely very afraid of tigers. And so Australia and New Zealand look pretty good. Okay, here we go.
I'm scared. I'm so scared.
Well, then go slow and just walk and look at me. Don't even look over there. Just walk. He's not going to move you. You just go slow.
He's not gonna move.
Yeah, just go slow. Just walk. Walk.
Should I run?
Yeah, run. Whoa! He did come at you! Whoa!
She doesn't look happy about that. I've seen this one before, but I haven't taken a really good look
Yeah,
at
run.
it. Okay, well, so this lady looks like she's out on a hike with a fella, and there's a snake up on the hill. Looks to be some sort of a colubrid snake. It's long and skinny and quick. Dark. If I had to guess, it's either probably a black racer or a black rat snake, but that's a guess. And he's instructing her. She looks like she's pretty scared of snakes generally, and he's telling her just to kind of walk by it. And as she runs towards it, the snake lunges forward and starts going across. So for starters, she's in no danger. Like this does not look to be a snake that has any venom or anything like that. But as far as why the snake did that, generally speaking, I talk to a lot of people who are scared of snakes, and I'm like, have you ever been bitten by any sort of a snake ever when you're just out minding your own business? And the answer is almost always, no. Usually, if you do, and get bitten by a snake, you probably stepped on it, or you're picking it up or something like that. But if you get bitten by a snake while you're just out walking, you pretty much have to step on it. This snake, it might have struck at her, because as I went back and watched this, let's see here. So
Just walk.
Snake is just sitting there.
Run.
But she runs. As far as the snake is concerned, she starts, because she's down the trail from it, so she runs towards the snake. She's not running exactly right at it, but she's running in the direction of the snake. So the snake up till that point looked like it was doing plan A defense for a snake, which is hold still and hope you're not noticed. But as soon as something runs at it, it's got to respond. That might have been a strike, but I really don't think it was. I think the snake running uphill wasn't going to be a good option for it. And so it's just darting down the hill in response to the fact that she ran towards it. The end. All right. Good one. That takes some nerves, doesn't it? See the ears out. This is a mock charge. The elephant's trying to figure him out. What is going on? Oh. So how much danger was he in? Some. Right. That was not no danger. Elephants in Africa kill hundreds of people every year. Probably. So the way it was acting with its ears out like that, the elephant was trying to look big and intimidating. And you'll see a lot of animals like this, that when they charge at you differently when they mean to kill you versus when they're just trying to scare you off. And most elephant charges are mock charges like this, where that elephant is going, look, I'm big and I'm huge and you better run off. Because actually engaging in combat with any sort of large animal. I mean, it has risks, and so they don't necessarily want to fight everything that they could beat in a fight. But he's charging in there, and one thing is that elephant's trying to scare him off and trying to get a read on how he's going to respond. If he's going to respond aggressively back immediately towards the elephant, then it might actually need to fight it because it's something actually trying to hurt the elephant. But that total calm when you're standing there, I mean, that's an extremely unusual response for any other animal to give to the elephant. So that elephant spent a long time standing there like, whoa, what do I do about this? And, it's just trying to read this guy. It's like, surely he's terrified, right? But, like there's that situation, you can see that with people, right? If you're a big, tough dude and this little guy's there and you start threatening him and he just stands there like Kobe Bryant when they're throwing the ball in his face, after a while you're like, what does he know that I don't know? Like, this guy, that's too much confidence. Something's wrong here. And so, that elephant goes for one more. Okay, well, how about this one? Gets extra in his face. After that, he kind of beats on the ground a little bit, and the elephant's just like, all right, forget this. This is, I've had enough of this. That's quite an experience. That is probably the best thing you could do if an elephant charges you, is just stand your ground and seem unconcerned about it. I'm not sure what percentage of humans have the intestinal fortitude to pull that off, but that would be the way to go. So like I said, most of the time it's going to be a mock charge. There are a couple of times of year or situations where it very well might not be a mock charge. One of those is when the males are in what's called musk. So there is a breeding season and the males get all hopped up on testosterone and they're just fighting everything around and constantly trying to mate. And it's very, very apparent when they are in musk. I'll leave it at that. But a male in musk would be an extremely dangerous animal. The other one would be if you've got a mother elephant defending a baby. She might charge you in earnest. Most of the rest of the time, it's probably a mock charge.
Let's switch categories.
All right. Yeah.
So this is amazing animal abilities.
Okay.
If you could, for each of these videos, talk about what's going on in the video. Is this for real or, is it faked?
So what's going on? Is it for real or not? Okay. All right. That's very amazing. Okay, so that is a golden eagle picking up what looks to be an adult red fox and carrying it off. I would say that probably is for real. If that, like, I didn't, it's getting harder and harder to recognize fakes. The reality is golden eagles do hunt foxes. So, I mean, yeah, that happens. I think, so I was looking, I think foxes are about, they're like 10 to 15 pounds, red foxes on average. Some are bigger. Some are like 5 pounds. I don't think that was a 5-pound fox. But golden eagles can lift weights like that. I would be curious to see how far it got with that fox. Like, I think it could lift it off the ground, but you could see it was very, very difficult for it to carry it very far. What I've seen, because golden eagles are terrifying. So I was saying in the video that's bigger than a bald eagle, and that's true. I've only seen one in person. It was in the middle of a road down by Moab, and so I had to stop for it. And it was, I've seen a lot of bald eagles, and that golden eagle was amazing. They're not that much bigger than bald eagles, but it looked way bigger to me when I saw this one. And there are places, there are people who use golden eagles for falconry to hunt foxes. They hunt foxes in the wild. They will hunt goats, like mountain goats and mountain sheep, and they just, they'll grab adults and pull them off of the mountain and then let gravity do a lot of the work. But they lift them off of the mountain. They couldn't fly off with one, but they can lift it up and drop it. So do I think it could pick up an adult red fox? I do. Do I think it could fly back to its nest with it? I doubt that. But maybe. Okay, let's see, what do we have next? Okay, that was awesome. So that was an anhinga, so I love anhingas, and I have a special relationship with anhingas because I used to work at Disney's Animal Kingdom in the Pangani Forest Trail, and there's a hippo pool there on the trail, and it is full of African cichlids, and the anhingas would come down there, and you see like they swim underneath the water, and they call them snake birds for two reasons. One of them is they quickly strike and they spear fish with their bill in the way that the ultimate ocean rumble thought that narwhals use their tusks. But it spears them with their bill, and then it usually comes up above the water, stands back on a rock or whatever, and it would throw them up in the air and catch them and swallow them down. And that's awesome. I mean, it was so, I had an underwater view of the whole thing, and then I could see it, and it would happen all the time. One time, one of them speared just an enormous cichlid. I mean, these birds, well, they're roughly the size of a cormorant if you've seen them. And I actually only recently learned that they are not themselves cormorants. I thought that they were cormorants because they stand there and they dry their wings, and they're built like cormorants, just with skinnier bills. They are sister to the cormorants, so they are very closely related, but they're in their own family. I think it's a separate family. Anhingidae? Something like that. Anyway, but they're in a separate group from the cormorants, but they're nested together, and so they're sister. They are also related to gannets and to boobies, like the blue-footed booby, and also frigate birds, which I got to see frigate birds down in Isla Mujeres last year, and that was my first time seeing frigate birds, and they were everywhere. I loved it. Anyway, when it got that giant cichlid, I was like, there's no way it's going to be able to swallow this down. And then it did. It swallowed the whole dang thing. And that is part of why they're called snake birds, because I couldn't believe it. It was that fish was this long and that deep, and that bird's neck is this big around. And it just went, you could watch it go down the whole way. I was like, there's no way this is ever going to happen. And then it did. They're amazing. Anhinga.
Okay, next.
All right. He looks like that, and he got like this shouldn't happen, should it? Look at that. That's just like the green tree monitor. Uses the ground to help position it. Oh, jeez. Oh my goodness. There it is. Oh man, look at that. They always wiggle to kind of get it down. Yeah, no, that's for real. Monitor lizards almost always swallow their prey whole. I've got I think this is an Asian water monitor, and it doesn't open, unfortunately. it's glued in place. But you can see, so this is the lower jaw. Oh, here, I can show you. So this is a Gila monster, but Gila monsters are very closely related to the monitor lizards, and so their skull isn't built like that of a snake. Snakes, they have no fusion between these two bones up front, which allows the lower jaw to splay out wide. And they've got a lot of flexibility in the skull. They've got a very, very kinetic skull up top. So this one here is a gaboon viper, and you can see like that skull is very, very minimalistic, and it's just kind of like two little arms. And so that skull can spread wide open, and snakes can swallow really big things. Other lizards, they don't have that. So basically, like if a Gila is going to swallow something, it's got to fit through that space. But they don't have the teeth for tearing off pieces, really. I mean, they could potentially death roll a little bit or something like that, but I really don't see that happening too often with most lizard species to tear off pieces, though I'm sure they do on occasion. Generally speaking, though, they just have to get it through that hole. And so they're not going to be able to swallow things as big as a snake. I mean, snakes on many occasions will swallow things that are larger in diameter than they are. That lizard's not going to do that. But if you think about it, you could fit a pretty big animal, as long as you could get its head in there. Monitors are very intelligent. They will use tools. They use, like all the objects around to try to position it in the right way. And then on top of that, they've got a more stable platform than a snake. And so, they can get leverage a little better. So basically, if it can get that head in, they can usually kind of work and gyrate their bodies until they can pull everything through that hole. And Bob's your uncle. That was cool. All right. Hey, it's a brand new year. And if you're looking to kick things off right, whether it's just eating healthier, saving time, or making life a little easier, let me introduce you to Factor. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, ready-to-eat meals straight to your door. These delicious meals are chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready in just 2 minutes. Whether you're into keto, calorie smart, vegan, or protein plus, Factor's weekly menu has over 35 options to choose from. Plus, there are 60 plus add-ons like smoothies and snacks to keep you fueled throughout the day. So if you're someone who wants to skip the hassle of grocery shopping, meal prep, and cleanup, Factor has you covered. It's an easy, stress-free way to enjoy scrumptious, healthy meals, and you can spend more time focusing on what you love. And the best part is, you can start your year with an amazing deal. Our fans will get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box using my link. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. Thank you, Factor, for supporting this channel and making content like this possible. Here's to a fantastic year ahead with great meals and even greater adventures.
Next section.
Okay.
Unidentified animals. Can you identify it? And tell me about that animal.
Okay. I know what that is. Oh, listen to it. Look at it. Okay, yeah, so that's a mole rat. And most people don't know about mole rats, that they even exist, but they do. People know about naked mole rats. They have heard of naked mole rats. There are two families actually of mole rats. There are the naked mole rats, and then there's like all of the other mole rats. And I think pretty much all of the mole rats, but the naked mole rats, I think there's one other group, but almost all of them are not eusocial. Eusociality meaning that they've got like a queen and then a whole bunch of non-reproductive workers. The other mole rats, everybody reproduces. So that eusociality is actually extremely unusual in a mammal and really like anything but termites and hymenopteran insects. And so that's a really weird thing about naked mole rats, but people know that. A couple of similarities, they got terrible vision, they dig. Their incisor teeth come outside of their lips, so their lips can close and the incisor teeth are still sticking out, and they chew their way through the ground, unlike moles or something that use big feet. They're biting their way through, which is totally crazy. And so these guys are another one of those groups. They're the mole rats, the naked mole rats. I think they're all in Africa. There may be some that got out of Africa a little bit, but they're pretty much all from Africa. And sort of when we were talking about the Afrotherians, in a video that came out just recently. This is another one of those African groups that has diversified greatly and filled roles that are usually filled by other groups because Africa was an island not so long ago. All right.
Look at the face on this thing. Wow.
Cute little guy. Dolphin face on a ray, but that's just an eagle ray. Well, they're very closely related to manta rays and like devil rays, which I think that's synonymous, but I think they're more in that group. And then also the cow-nosed rays. They're all in a group. And one thing you'll notice is they've got a very different general shape than like stingrays do. And this is largely because they swim up in the water column more than stingrays do, which are usually buried underneath the substrate. And so they're up swimming. So they're much better swimmers than most of the other rays. But anyway, that's just a normal eagle ray. Okay.
A paddleboarder in California just found a mysterious sea creature.
Look, it's south.
It's transparent, looks like a chain, and is gooey. Would you dare touch this?
What is that?
That's a funny creature. I've never seen one of these in person, but I'm pretty sure that is a salp, which is a type of tunicate, which it looks like a cnidarian, but it is actually a chordate. So chordata is the group to which the vertebrates belong, but not all chordates are vertebrates, but all vertebrates are chordates. This is a chordate. This is a very, very weird animal. It's like a lot of cnidarians. It has alternation of generations. So it has an asexual phase, which it starts out solitary and it buds off and produces this chain of essentially clones. And the chain is a sequential hermaphrodite, which means that it is male and female at different points during its development. I guess sort of like clownfish, and except the opposite direction. It is female first. So when they first mature into adults, they mature as females, and then when they get older, they mature into males. They move around using jet propulsion, which is pretty cool. And while they're pumping water through themselves to move, they also filter feed on phytoplankton. And they grow super duper fast, as it kind of in response to phytoplankton blooms. So when there's a bloom of phytoplankton, all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, there will be a bloom of salps. Pretty crazy. Okay.
So some guys got a surprise catch out in the ocean. Check out this fish they got, guys. This is absolutely incredible.
That's cool. That is so cool. I don't think they growl though. I think that's other than my new.
I know what that is.
Well, look at this thing. It's like a sailfish. That's sick. Hold it. All right, let him go.
That is a lancet fish. Those are really cool. So they're carnivorous fish. They live primarily in the mesopelagic zone, which is just, it's like just between where there's a lot of light and where there's virtually no light in the ocean. So they live in extremely low light, and so they're a visual predator, and they've got those gigantic eyes. They're scaleless, and they don't have a swim bladder, which benefits them greatly because they're down very deep. And a lot of times when you see people catch a deep sea fish, you'll notice that its organs are pouring out of its mouth. And the reason for that is because the swim bladder, as they get pulled up very quickly, the compression on them goes down, and so the volume of that swim bladder increases dramatically and faster than they can pull gas out of it. If they were ascending on their own slowly, they would be able to slowly pull gas out. Some fish can burp it out or effectively fart it out, but some have to just pull it out with their bloodstream, and that's very slow. And so if you pull them up quickly, it's fatal for them. Even that doesn't happen to the lancetfish because they don't have a swim bladder, but they are still very susceptible to decompression sickness, the bends. So same thing that scuba divers get, just as the external pressure drops, as they raise. Under high pressure, there can be more dissolved gases in the body, and as the pressure decreases, the amount of dissolved gases in the body decreases, and so it starts to condense and make its way out into the tissues, and so you get these like bubbles in your tissue, and so that can be absolutely devastating. So if you pull up a lancetfish, even though its guts won't pour out, a lot of times they have a horrible case of decompression sickness, and that can potentially be fatal for them. These guys, while we're on the topic of hermaphrodites, by the way, these are simultaneous hermaphrodites. So before we talked about a sequential hermaphrodite, which is female and then male, simultaneous hermaphrodites are male and female at the same time, meaning they're making both sperm and eggs, which is very convenient when you live in the deep ocean. These are actually really common fish in the deep ocean. A lot of times they're caught by people who are like fishing on these deep sea lines for tuna and things like that. They're actually caught really often, I think. But they, when you live in an area where it's maybe hard to find friends, it's nice that any other lancetfish that you might bump into is a potential mate. Okay, got another one?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let me watch that one more time, but I'm pretty sure that's a raccoon. Yeah, that's a good angle right there. That's a naked raccoon. The great naked raccoon. The only question is, how did this raccoon get so naked? And it's probably either got mange, which would be mites, or it's got alopecia, which is an autoimmune disease. So one of those things is going wrong. So you've got a hairless raccoon, and that's what they look like. All right, what do we have here? I'm pretty sure that's a saltwater crocodile. I think. Okay, so it's definitely a crocodile. It's a crocodile that's had a rough go. Let's see what else is missing on this guy. He's missing a leg somewhere. There he is. Okay, so he's missing a front, most of his front leg. His face looks all messed up. Maybe a little bit of tail might be missing too. That tail looks pretty good. And the reason I've arrived at saltwater crocodile is just that he doesn't have very many osteoderms on his neck, and he's got big gaps in the osteoderms. If you want to know how to identify every single species of crocodilian in existence, we do have an entire video just for you. This is the longest animal in the world. Maybe not this individual, because it's 25 feet long. This group of animals, they get to be the longest animals anywhere on Earth. That is a siphonophore, which looks a lot like the salp that we saw earlier. It also is colonial. They're often bioluminescent. Could you tell if that one was bioluminescing?
I couldn't tell.
Well, they're often bioluminescent. They're hydrozoans in a really similar way to the salp. They do asexual budding, so they're also colonial. Man-o-wars are siphonophores like this. They bud asexually, and so that's how you end up with this giant chain. And then the chain reproduces sexually, and so it's a really similar life cycle, except this is a cnidarian and not a tunicate. So not a chordate, is a cnidarian. Pretty cool. Okay.
Oh my god, what is that?
Oh, that's so cool. I would like to see one of those. This is another place on my
Oh God,
list
what is that?
of places I would like to go that doesn't have tigers. That is the largest carnivoran, at least, and I think the largest land predator in all of Madagascar. That is the fossa. The fossas, they look like cats. They are not, however, cats. They're actually more closely related to mongooses, but they are part of a group of carnivorans that are unique to Madagascar. So they're endemic there, and again, I point you to our Afrotheria video where we start talking about the radness of Madagascar and why it's that way. But this is probably a group we should do a video about in the future. But again, this is also the primary predator of lemurs. I think they're the only animal that eats, at least the only mammal that eats all of the lemur species. And that's really cool. They're also polyandrous, which means that one female mates with many, many males. And promiscuity among females often leads to exaggerated features among males. And so the fossa is incredibly well endowed.
Wow. Thanks, Clint. Next.
Oh, that's hideous. So I'm going to ignore the use of a crustacean claw for a second. So those are eel gobies. I think those are the purple eel goby, but it's honestly, I'm not positive. But those are eel gobies. I love goby fish. Gobies are usually kind of adorable, little bottom dwelling, primarily marine, but I think they get into brackish and probably even, they're from freshwater gobies as well. These guys, like they're carnivorous fish. They're found, these are found in freshwater, saltwater, even up on land. So those guys, like, they're not dying. They can breathe atmospheric air and get oxygen from the atmosphere for quite a while. But yeah, those are eel gobies. They look like chest buster aliens, though, don't they? They're freaky as heck.
Okay, Clint, let's
Yes.
switch to gorillas.
Oh, thank goodness. I love gorillas. That's a big boy. Oh. He is not super happy. I can smell this video. I love them so much. Okay, so the first thing he does. So this is a male, obviously a male gorilla. And I'm not sure which one. This doesn't look like a mountain gorilla, so I would say it's either an eastern or western lowland gorilla. Probably western lowland gorilla because they're the most common. But anyway, when he standing up like that, he's already showing some aggression, and then obviously the chest popping. So they do it with a cupped hand. It's not. They don't beat on their chests, and you can hear the sound of it. Let's see if I can back it up, and you can hear that. It's a pop, 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 and that's this is it. Isn't that cool? And then you can see, so he comes in and his lip is pulled extremely tight, which that's so in his quadrupedal stance, up like that, lip tight, that's one of the lower levels of aggression he could show. So something about this, I mean, he's surrounded by people there. So something about the situation he didn't like, and it might not even have to do with the people. And there might be another male or something that's come too close, but he's showing some low-level aggression. The standing up and the chest beating, that's a little bit higher, but this is all a threat. He's, at least as far as the people that I can see and the camera person, he's not staring right at anybody, which is high-level gorilla aggression. But he's showing he's unhappy. And in addition to all of these visual and sound cues, he's also almost certainly letting off a pretty pungent musk, which you could always tell when the gorillas were starting to get into it because you could smell them from a long way away. And it's not the worst smell, but it is thick. It's a thick and I mean I can smell this video. it's like that. Oh, I love them. But you can see, like, this is a 400 to 500 pound animal, and he's not happy about this. But he's not doing anything violent. This is all just posturing. He's just communicating. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. Okay, what is this the last one?
Yeah.
Emma was immediately captivated by Victoria. He's a sweet boy. Oh, Donny, he's looking at you so sweetly. Yes. That's who's just talking to you today. See?
Yeah, that growling is not
There you are.
an aggressive thing at all.
Oh, look, he's
Can you see how relaxed his face is?
Sweet. He absolutely loves that. Okay. All right, he's a big boy. Yeah, that's so clever. I think I've lost my wife. You boy. Oh my God, that's just so sweet. Emma. I think he's completely in love. He's smitten. Watching Emma and Victoria was something incredibly beautiful. These beautiful animals, so noble, so gentle, just shows one must never underestimate how extraordinarily beautiful these gorillas are.
And that is why gorillas are my favorite animals. I used to be able to watch them for hours a day, and you never, ever get bored. And I would say of all the animal experiences I could ever have, that's the animal experience I would want to have the most. Well, I will tell you, that was a lot more fun than I thought it would be. If you have more TikTok videos that you would like for me to review in the future, please comment those below. I mean, should we do this again? As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon. Well, hi there. My name is Clint LOVES. I have a PhD in biology, as well as a master's degree and an undergraduate degree in biology and zoology. I run a biology outreach called Clint's Reptile Room in Springville, Utah. This summer, we'll be doing our second year of biology summer camps called Clint's Reptile Academy, this time for ages 5 and up. That includes you adults. We'll have a link to the registration in the description. I'm a university instructor, at least when I have time, and an online instructor of animal biology here on the YouTube channel Clint's Reptiles, which is where you are right now. And a few months ago, I ventured into the societal poison that is TikTok for the first time. And just today, by the way, someone asked me if I was sure that TikTok was a poison and not a venom on society, which was a great question. It is a poison because we have to consume it. It isn't injected into us. Anyway, I recently consumed this poison for the first time, and you guys loved it. So today, we are returning to the abyss that is TikTok. And Mr. Jason, what have we today?
Today we have 4 categories.
Okay.
Crazy animal encounters, unidentified animals,
Nice.
cryptozoology, and because you love them, sharks.
Shark. I'm wearing my shark tie today.
There you go.
Okay, so what's first?
We're going to start with crazy animal encounters. With each one, if you could give us some idea of what is going on,
Okay.
what it is doing, and how much danger the people in the video are in.
Okay.
My heart is beating so fast. I think that's a whale tail. It's just come up and stuck its tail up and it's not going anywhere. I don't even know what to say. I'm backing up. What the? I don't want to get too close. Backing up. This is the craziest thing that's ever happened. The transparent kayak is making the whales act so weird. It's just come up and put its tail up in the air like that. It's not even, I don't even know what to say anymore. Oh, and the little baby's just swimming around it. Is it, look at it, that's a huge whale tail right in front of me.
Okay. So the first thing, that has nothing to do with the transparent kayak. What that is, that looks to be a humpback whale. In fact, I'm pretty sure of it because you could see the baby has very long pectoral fins. and it's sleeping. Whales have voluntary breathing. We as humans, we can breathe voluntarily or involuntarily. So you can decide to breathe, or your body will just breathe, and you'll breathe all night. Whales, when they sleep, they will drown if they're breathing involuntarily. And so they have to surface and deliberately breathe. But when they sleep, they just hold their breath, and they will often sit there sort of near the surface. They've got some types of like hemispherical sleep, so parts of their brain can be asleep at a given time, and they can still surface like that. And these are some really cool things too. So like that baby you could see was awake. They can't hold their breath for quite as long as the mom, and they even have trouble swimming long distances and stuff. They'll actually ride in the mom's slipstream and they can be asleep in the slipstream while mom is swimming away, which is pretty tremendous. Oh, and no danger, or virtually no danger. I mean, I suppose the whale could wake up and accidentally slap you with its tail, but unlikely.
At your feet.
Oh, that's scary. That's scary as shit.
All right, so that is a big bull alligator. That, given the way that it approached them, it's probably a bull alligator that is used to receiving food scraps from humans. So it came right up to their boat and came up just expecting food. As far as how much danger they're in, definitely some. That alligator's probably not coming up there to attack them, but it's very startling. He put his hand on the top of the alligator's snout, which, I mean, if you know what you're doing, you can do that. You can push that jaw closed, and you can potentially shove it off. But if you do that move wrong, and say get it a little bit on the side, alligators will snap sideways very quickly, and once it grabs your hand, I mean, any number of terrible things. Yeah, it could start rolling and absolutely rip your arm off. It could drag you into the water, and there'd probably be nothing that anybody there could do about it. So that was potentially a life-threatening situation, though alligators attack very, very few people, given how many alligators there are in especially high-traffic areas like in Florida and other parts of the southeastern United States. Maybe not as much danger as you would think, but definitely some danger there. We've actually got a whole video on a pretty bad alligator bite that happened to one of our friends, Lindsay Bull, and you can check that out here if you want to see that.
Right there. Come on, Mike. Come on. I got it. He's like your Did I get it? I got a video. Thank you. Oh, hey! Mike, hey! No, Mike. Mike, get out of it, Mike.
Just move. Just
Mike, don't move. Mike, no, going that way. He got it. Oh my! You are right. Hey!
I have that on video.
Let's go break him. Mike got him from a bear. He barely got you. It's not even
Barely got you.
Holy.
Okay, so that was some real danger. The alligator people before, like, maybe they didn't need to touch that alligator, but that was a pretty reasonable response to having a big old bull alligator pop out of the water onto your boat. Don't do this. This isn't a good idea. That is a big black bear. Black bears, males can get over 500 pounds in rare instances. I don't think this one was that big, but that is a good-sized male black bear. Fortunately, that black bear never showed any signs of aggression. Not even when it swiped him was that much aggression. It was just sort of like, what are you doing? And because that bear could have just absolutely destroyed that guy if it would have wanted to. I mean, you know, if it had decided to maul him to death, I don't think there's anything anybody there was going to do to stop it. It was, you know, it was just going to kill him. And, you know, black bears are not known to be the most aggressive of bears. They're smaller for bears. But, I mean, American black bears have killed, I think, like 67 people since 1900. So, like, they do kill people from time to time. And, I mean, you know, if a bear comes into your yard, maybe, I'm just going to throw this out there, get out of your yard for a while. You don't need to be like, hey, bear, let me show you the exit. Don't do that. That's a good way to die.
Don't let the door hit you in the butt.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That bear's just sort of like, what are you doing?
I know how to leave.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
I could get this puny gate open on my
Oh
own.
man, if that bear would have stood up, like that game would have changed in a hurry. That bear was being extremely understanding. That bear didn't really want to be there anyway. And it's like, yes, I'm going. Okay, yeah, just knock it off. I'm going. He was fortunate. That's all it was. That could have been real bad. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
So that was a guy with a huge, looks to be a male saltwater crocodile. And this is going to sound crazy, but I will tell you that he was in very little danger. At the same time, I will also tell you, if you ever spot a saltwater crocodile or any sort of crocodile or any sort of large crocodilian, and you go down and do any of that, you will be seriously injured or killed. Guaranteed. The reason why he wasn't in danger is, I mean, you can see very clearly that is an extremely socialized crocodile. Now, I'm not saying it's a captive crocodile. I've actually seen a lot of videos and situations like this. This is actually not all that uncommon, where you have these big socialized male saltwater crocodiles in villages, in areas within their ranges. This is a really, really smart animal. You got to recognize that. One thing that shows you how used to people that animal is and how well socialized it's been, he's splashing in the water right in front of its face, right next to its face. Okay? At times, he's splashing in the water right next to that crocodile, and he's not even looking at the crocodile. And you gotta recognize that crocodiles are covered head to toe in what are called ISOs, integumentary sensory organs. They're also sometimes called DPRs, dome pressure receptors. On alligators, they've pretty much just got them on their head. On crocodiles, from the tip of the snout to the end of the tail, they've got these ISOs. And they're mechanoreceptors, they're thermoreceptors, they're chemosensory receptors. They pick up all of that. They detect every bit of that moving and that splashing that's going on, and they are very, very wired to react to that splashing. If you ever are in an area where there are crocodilians and you start splashing around on the surface, they'll start coming to you. And, and if they detect movement with those ISOs next to their head, like instinctively they snap. He's doing all of that right next to it. He's got food, it looked like, in his hand. Like it's detecting all of this. But it knows to wait until he feeds it. And that's a huge amount of work that the people in that village have been doing with that specific animal. It's really cool. I mean, not only is that an amazing thing just to be able to witness, and what an experience that would be to have a bond like that with the saltwater crocodile, but it's even really good for the villages and things, because that male tends to keep out all of the other large saltwater crocodiles from the area. He is the dude. And so the waterways become much safer for all of the people, because the crocodile that patrols them, that dominates that area, like he knows the people know him, they know how to act around him, he knows how to act around them. It's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing. Again, don't ever try that. Don't ever try to do that. But you can see just how intelligent these animals are. They're very, very smart. They're not just instinctive killing machines. They're thoughtful, intelligent animals.
Okay, we're going to switch gears. The next category is unidentified animal identification.
All right.
So tell us what the heck we're looking at.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so that's what's called a muntjac deer. They're from Asia. There's also, I think, a really big invasive population in England. They've got little antlers, very small. Like, I don't know if you can see there, they're really tiny. They primarily fight with tusks. So they're a tusked deer, though they're not super closely related to some of the other tusked deer that are out there. Tusks are actually fairly common in deer. And those wild things that are opening and closing, those are scent glands on their face. They've got some in front of their eyes and farther up, and they can open them, and they tend to rub them on things. Anyway, that gives them quite a wild look. All right, so that is a basket star, which is a type of echinoderm, like brittle stars. In fact, I think that is a type of brittle star. Sea stars, these sorts of things. They're a brittle star, but with multiple branching arms. So the arms will branch, and then the branches will branch. And like all echinoderms, I'm not sure what the status is of their tube feet. They've probably got them. So other echinoderms would be things like sea urchins, like sea cucumbers, these sorts of things, and they've generally got tube feet. They have a hydrovascular system, so they don't have a blood circulatory system. They move stuff around with water, and they can pressurize the little tubes and stuff in order to move their tube feet. Anyway, they're a really crazy organism with pentaradial symmetry, though as juveniles, they have bilateral symmetry. They're actually part of the bilateria. And interestingly enough, if you look at the phylogeny of animals, of the invertebrates, they are among the closest relatives of the vertebrates, which is pretty wild.
What the f*** is that? Ah! Get away! Get away! What the f*** is it? No! No, no, no! Is it dead? I think it's f***ing dead.
Okay. Just Ma! Ma! Ah! The fucking thing's moving! Ah! What the fuck is that thing? It's a fucking bat! It's got the fucking virus! It's alive! Ma! Call the fucking cops! Ma! Get the fucking gun! Get away with me! Stop it! Ah! Put it down! What the f? What the f is that? It's a fucking... It's a fucking dinosaur! Ma, call the cops!
So I kind of bet that's not the original audio, just because those are from like Southeast Asia, and that guy doesn't sound like he is. But that is a flying lemur. There are two species of flying lemurs. They're not actually lemurs. They're from the order Dermoptera. We actually talked about them a little bit in our video on the primates from last month. Like many of the basal primates, they have a tooth comb. They can glide. You saw they've got their limbs all sort of webbed together like a flying squirrel. They can glide more than 200 feet, sometimes upwards of like 500 feet. They're not actually flying. They're falling with style like Buzz Lightyear, but they will lose very little altitude as they glide in many cases. They are eutherian mammals, which means they've got a chorioallantoic placenta, but they are born super altricial, like marsupials. So they come out really, really underdeveloped. And the female makes what's called a quasi-pouch, using her tail and her gliding membrane to form essentially like a marsupial's pouch. Anyway, this particular one looks to me like it's caught on some sort of fishing line. I really don't know what's going on exactly, but it's kind of a sad video, I think. So looking like right at first, I thought that those were going to be fish or maybe squid. But I think what they are is, they're polychaete worms, which they're closely related to earthworms. These are marine worms. Something different. I actually want to do a full video on the annelida, because segmented worms are generally quite a bit different looking than earthworms are, even though earthworms are one. For one thing, they have way more defined heads. They've usually got pretty awesome jaws. And in fact, I think the jaws on those particular polychaete worms, I think they're like made out of zinc or some sort of metal. Anyway, crazy. And they've also got these large appendages called parapodia, which in a lot of the polychaete worms like those, when they go into a breeding swarm, which is what's going on there, the parapodia grow considerably, and because during most of the time they spend more time down in the bottom, but they come up and they swim around, sort of like the way that earthworms do when it rains in the spring or something. They come out, and I'm not sure about this, but earthworms tend to be hermaphrodites, and so those might be as well. I'm just not sure about that. But anyway, a swarm of worms. Okay, so that was a bittern, which is a type of heron. Herons, I don't know if you've seen birds like great blue herons. I recently saw tricolored herons, and you can distinguish them from birds like cranes most easily when they fly, because they pull their head back like this, and so they sit with their head not sticking way out at the end of their neck. They've got long necks, but they stick them back like this, and so do bitterns. Bitterns are really weird. You know, they're more cryptically colored and more reclusive than a lot of other herons. And I don't know if you notice how cool their coloration is. When they're first afraid, you know, if they see something they think is concerning, what they do is they stand perfectly still with their head pointed straight up in the air, and it just kind of looks like reeds because of the striping, and they'll kind of sway in the breeze a little bit. And it's only if that doesn't work that they throw on that big they'll puff up all their feathers, and they bring their wings down, and they just look enormous and crazy wild. But yeah, just a bittern.
Just a creepy looking bittern.
Just a creepy looking bittern. I think that what that is a Deepsteria jellyfish. This is a type of jellyfish from the deep sea, and I guess it's fairly common for deep sea jellyfish in general, but they don't have any tentacles. They just trap prey inside of their big old bell, and that bell, that's it's not as big as it looked there. Like that looks like that's like, I don't know, 15 feet across. They're like 2 feet across, so I think it was just kind of close to the camera. But anyway, they'll wrap their bell around prey. Interestingly enough, too, they've got symbiotic isopods that live in the bell as well, which is kind of bodacious.
I feel like the music didn't really fit. It's so graceful and elegant.
Obviously, this world is full of some really cool animals, and oftentimes we don't even know what they are. Like things you've never seen. And that's one of the things I most enjoy is going out into the world and finding things I never even knew existed. That was one of the things I loved so much about going to South America, was going out into the Amazon rainforest and being like, I know there's some animals here that I've seen before, but just discovering how many incredible things there were that I'd never seen in my life, and then getting to share those things with you. And I want to do that all over the world. Now, that trip was made possible due to the support of our patrons on Patreon. And if you would like to see us do that some more, please consider supporting us so we can.
Okay, we have a few more of those to do, but I want to pause for a moment to do a bit of cryptozoology.
I was excited when I heard about that.
We'll get back to the unidentified animal identification at the end. But right now, I have a couple of different cryptids for you. I want to know if you have heard of it before, what you think is going on in the videos, and do you think that this creature might actually exist?
Okay.
Since the late 1800s, there have been talks of dinosaurs in the Congo, and one in particular catches many people's eye. Mokele Mbembe, which roughly translates to one who stops the flow of the river, has been spotted basically for over the past 150 years in rural parts of, well, rural is understating it, but Lake Teli in Africa. Now, over the years, multiple sightings have happened, and there have been multiple expeditions to find Mokele Mbembe, but none of them have produced any real evidence besides, a couple of grainy pictures. This is one of those stories that has been talked about for so long that you got to think there's some sort of truth behind it. And I would like to believe there is, but there hasn't been any evidence to show that this is a real animal. Lake Teli is also so far removed from civilization in the outreaches of the Congo, you never know.
So yeah, I have heard of this one before. Mokele Mbembe. I first heard of it when I was a little kid. My favorite, or one of my favorite things, was a video. It starred Christopher Reeves, and it was about dinosaurs. And we rented it from the library so many times that eventually I got my own copy of this video. I found it on YouTube actually not too long ago. It is, I still enjoy the heck out of it. And they talked about him there. What I understand of it is it's like a small sauropod dinosaur that's supposed to be way out in the Congo. Like you said there, I don't think there's a lot of hard evidence that it really is a sauropod. I've heard people say that it might be black rhinoceroses, which used to live in that area, that people were seeing and talking about. But I mean, of all the places where something can go undetected for a long time, the Congo is definitely one of those places. I know things like okapis and mountain gorillas. They were out, in these remote parts of Africa. The okapis, at the very least, I think maybe the mountain gorillas as well. Like a lot of people were like, just thought that was all crazy and just rumors. The locals telling wild stories, and then turns out they were absolutely right. That said, if you look at mountain gorillas, yeah, we didn't know there were mountain gorillas, but we knew there were gorillas. Okapis, at first we didn't know what they were, but they're giraffes, and we know about other giraffes. What we don't have any evidence of at all for the last 66 million years would be any extant sauropods at all. And so if there is a lineage of sauropods surviving in the Congo, there isn't any evidence of them that we have found anywhere else for a very, very long time. Not impossible. Not impossible. Things we thought were extinct turned out not to be extinct. Not, I wouldn't say with some regularity, but it does happen. And so it would be the heck of a thing. But I will be very pleasantly surprised if there are dinosaurs in the Congo that aren't birds.
It's a bird.
Yeah. All right, so that was one. Looks like you had a couple more.
Yep.
Are these all from Utah?
I think so.
Okay. Before we get to the last one, I want to give a couple of thoughts about those two. So that first one I saw a few months ago, I think it was just from like last year, and I am not closed off to the possibility that there is a species of ape more human-like than chimpanzees and bonobos out there somewhere alive still. They've certainly existed in the past, and not nearly as distant of a past as sauropod dinosaurs. And so, you know, if things like okapis that maybe aren't really even trying to avoid us all that much and aren't nearly as intelligent as we are, were able to avoid us for most of human history, at least most of Western history, you know, it's possible. I think I can give some explanations for what else those first two videos could be. So that one that looks like it's filmed like through a spotting scope up on the mountain. I mean, that is something walking. Well, okay, I'll be clear. Both of those are just videos of Dave Kaufman. That's probably the most likely explanation. But you can see they walk in a somewhat human-like gait, much like Dave, and.
Somewhat.
but seriously though, that first one is moving very quickly in the snow, which, unless that video has been sped up, which it doesn't look to me like it has, you know, it's not so much that it's moving quickly, it's that it's moving so effortlessly over the snow. So my best explanation for what that one would be, if not a Bigfoot, maybe a snowshoer, maybe a really big Dave Kaufman-like snowshoer up there. You know, snowshoes are going to facilitate much easier movement, you know, but that is some interesting footage. The second one, again, I'm not ignoring the possibility that it could be a Bigfoot. Other fairly likely explanations, it could be a black bear standing on two legs. It could also be a hoax. A guy, you know, the first one doesn't look like a hoax. It looks like they spotted something. You know, it'd be hard even if you were wearing like a monkey suit to move like that, unless you're a snowshoer. I think I'd really have to get a long, hard look and have, I'd need to watch some snowshoers and how they move, but it's moving fast. Second one, you know, it could easily be just a person in a suit out there. You don't ever get a great look at it, but it's interesting. That's interesting. All right, let's see the last one. So yeah, I guess all of these come from Utah, I think. So, and like right there. So, which is exciting. That one, the first two, I think they could either be Bigfoot or something else, not necessarily a hoax. That one looks like it's either the real deal or it's somebody trying to look like the real deal. That fur color seems lighter than I'm used to seeing, so maybe they have different shades, blends in pretty well.
That one is more Chewbacca brown.
Yeah. It almost looked like like a ghillie suit.
Yeah.
But not entirely. Like the face is not ghillie suitish.
All right. Before we get back to unidentified animal identification, let's take a look at some sharks.
I was hoping for sharks. Yeah, let's watch it one more time. Oh boy. That's awesome, isn't it? That is a pretty good sized male great white shark bumping a guy in the head with its face. And I've seen that one before a few months ago. It's really cool. You know, it shows, I think, a lot about what sharks like great white sharks are really all about. One thing that great white sharks virtually never do is eat anybody. They're not really into that. A large percentage of the bites from great white sharks involve people on the surface, often on surfboards. And, you know, when a great white shark is down below looking up, it's a silhouette of a sea lion, and they attack from below. In South Africa, you know, you'll see where they leap all the way out of the water and grab sea lions. And there's not a whole lot of time to assess. You know, you look up there and you're like, that's a sea lion. And you swim up and you nail it. And then once they nail it, they're like, no, that doesn't taste like a sea lion at all. And the problem is, even if you're mistakenly bitten by a great white, like, yeah, it's catastrophic, because this is, you know, one of the most powerful bites that you can possibly take. And if you're not bitten like that, the way that people are often bitten by sharks is more of an exploratory bite, which is something that totally could have happened there. That shark was curious about that diver. And on their faces and going down their body, they've got all these little pits. They're sort of similar to the ISOs of crocodilians. They're called ampullae de Lorenzini, and they pick up electrical signals as well as other things of movement in the water. Anyway, there's a lot of sensory stuff going on in the face of that shark, and that shark was going up and like, what is this guy? What is this thing? And it was exploring him, and fortunately, you know, just coming up and bumping into him, that was enough for him to figure out at least that this isn't something he wanted to eat, because a lot of time, and they don't have hands. And so a lot of times the next thing that they would explore with would be their mouth, and just an exploratory bite from a great white shark, catastrophic. I said they don't eat people because they tend to spit them out. Like if they wanted to eat people, they would just eat people. They eat things the size of people all the time, but they don't tend to do that. But sometimes they will bite you just to find out what that was. And I would say that diver was extremely lucky. He's alive only because that shark decided not to see what he was all about by tasting him.
The bump was good enough.
Bump was enough.
Right there, wow. Holy crap. Right there, wow. Holy crap.
Okay, I think that was Ocean Ramsey, and who's really an interesting person to follow. I would honestly love to spend a day out with sharks with her just to learn the ways that she interacts with, especially tiger sharks, which is what that was. But that was an interesting one. Like she sticks her head in the water and whoop. Like you can tell she saw it because she starts backing up and everything. That tiger shark came up and tiger sharks seem to be one of those sharks. So tiger sharks, one of the things they specialize on are sea turtles. And so they're, and they kind of chase them and stalk them and stuff like that. It's really interesting if you see a sea turtle defending itself from a tiger shark because they turn sideways because with their shell sideways, they're gape limited. And so the sharks can't get around the shell if they're sideways to the shark. It is a shark that is maybe a shark that's a little bit more likely to just come up and bite you than is a great white. A bite from a tiger shark is not as catastrophic. Like say you have a fully grown tiger shark versus a fully grown great white and you're going to get bitten by one. The tiger shark would be better, but real bad. And I'd have to look at the statistics, but I think a much higher percentage of shark attacks, not that there are very many, but I think tiger sharks are a lot more likely. It's really interesting watching her. She swims with tiger sharks all the time. And she swam with great whites and stuff too. It's really, when I was a kid, nobody swam with these sharks. It was too dangerous because they will come up and bite you. And so people, if you observe these sharks, you did it in a cage. As people have been learning more about their behavior, they've started to interact with them in different ways. And one of the things is, they don't come in like a hard attack bite. It is just sort of a curious exploratory bite that they seem to do. And so they don't come up on you really fast. And you know what they're doing. And they just kind of put their hand on the shark's rostrum and just kind of push it down in a way. And that's like good enough for the shark. It's like, all right. And as long as you're paying attention, you don't have one come bounce off the back of your head. And you do this move right the very first time you try it. You only get 2 tries to do it wrong. But if you do it right, the first time, like you can interact with these sharks. It's pretty amazing.
2 seconds won't do anything.
Get him!
Won't do anything.
Get him!
Okay, so did that say that was in the Everglades? Yeah. I'm not sure if that's freshwater or kind of brackish water where they were. I mean, I wouldn't think it would be full salt water. I didn't get a great look at it, but I would say your most likely shark that is a bull shark. Bull sharks are, they get way up into fresh water. They can switch a lot of things with their physiology, so they can live in saltwater, they can live in freshwater, brackish, and they get big. I mean, you can keep a bull shark, I think, like indefinitely in your pond if you live in a place that's warm enough. And but they get huge. They're one of the sharks that attack the most people, and they attack people in weird places. One of the stranger things I feel like that any of my professors said during my undergraduate. So you'll find them way up in the Mississippi River. You find them way up in the Nile. And one of the stranger things any of my professors said is that people often get attacked by bull sharks in the Nile because they're up in there and they're just willy-nilly out there because they're not concerned about getting attacked by a shark, because why would you expect there to be a shark there? And that's fair, I suppose. But I don't know who's going willy-nilly into the Nile. Like, there's Nile crocodiles, hippos that kill more people than all the other African vertebrates combined. I don't know who's waiting out there like, at least there aren't sharks. but yeah, and that one you could see very clearly, sort of like with what we were saying with the crocodiles, those Ampulidae lawrencini. He's looked like he's fishing, so he's probably got fish smell on his hands. That's probably actually what he's washing off is some fish, and he's splashing around, and they're very cued into that splashing too, because sharks, like crocodilians, like they don't waste a lot of time trying to catch stuff that's like fish that are healthy and swimming around. They're looking for something that's in the water and not doing too well, having trouble swimming, or a fish that's not very healthy, something that's easy to catch. And so that kind of struggling and splashing, that gets their attention. You certainly don't expect that when you just stick your hands in really quickly. In the Everglades, I wouldn't willy-nilly be putting my hands in the water because I don't suspect there to be any sharks, because even if I wasn't worried about sharks, there are a lot of alligators and crocodiles and all kinds of other cool things. Macaque monkeys with hepatitis. There's a lot of stuff in the Everglades to worry about. But bull sharks potentially are one of those things. And you could see again there, it's one of those situations where it thought it was getting something good as soon as it bit that guy and was like, oh, that's not what I thought it was. Let him go.
Yikes.
That's amazing. I love that. You know, that is a side of sharks that we're just sort of getting like for the first time in the last few decades. And, you know, that's tiger shark. You know, some of these sharks, these people that dive with them on the regular, like they know the individual sharks and the sharks know them. Because that shark, I mean, it looked like it was coming up inquisitively, but it never attempted any sort of a bite or anything like that. Like it came up, he put his hand on its rostrum, and you know, and he eventually pushed away. But you know, like they had this moment. You know, I feel like with so many of these animals, it's not like these sharks are getting nicer, or necessarily. I mean, they are having more experiences like this. But the big thing is, a lot of animals like this, like they're not unreasonable killing machines. They are intelligent animals. You can interact with them safely, and it's not about training them. It's about understanding them to the point that you know how to behave and act in their presence, and then that totally changes the math. You know, and it's taken us a long time to understand some of these because the cost of getting it wrong in some cases can be very high. But you know, sharks almost never attack people. The frequency with which it happens is so low, and there are people doing that with tiger sharks every day. And you know, I think a lot of them are in Hawaii, and you know, there are a lot of the deadliest sharks in the world in Hawaii and very few shark attacks.
Okay, we have just a few more unidentified animals for you to identify, and then we'll call it.
All right.
First one.
I found this creature. I think it's a frog. Hello, frog. It doesn't move like a frog.
No.
I'll name it Wally. Let's go to Ohio, Wally.
Okay. Yeah, that is not a frog. That is a nudibranch sea slug. I think that one's called a blue sea dragon. Really cool. The nudibranch sea slugs, like if you're not aware of those in general, you're in for a treat, because they are, most of them don't quite look like that. But they don't look like normal slugs either. They almost look like a flying carpet of just brilliant colors. That one though, the blue sea dragon, every semester when I start my class, I always have them try to come up with an animal that they've never heard of before. And if they come up with one that I've never heard of before, they get extra credit. And that's always one of them that they come to me with. But they're super cool. That is actually the bottom side of the blue sea dragon. And they float on the surface. They gulp air like into their stomach, and it makes them buoyant. And then they're just on the bottom, and they're counter shaded. So their back is like really shiny, kind of metallic-y, and their belly is sort of blue. So if you look down on them from above, they look blue like the ocean. If you look up at them from below, they look bright like the sun. They're counter-shaded like great white sharks, except in reverse because they're on their backs. They eat cnidarians like man-o-wars, which is something they have in common with the leatherback sea turtle. And I have a scary suspicion that in a Who Would Win book, they too would probably lose to the Portuguese man-o-war, upon which they regularly feed. That's so cool. Did you hear that clicking?
Yeah.
All right. So that's an owl. That is the defensive posture of owls pretty much across the board. Like both major owl lineages, they both do that. They both stand like that with their head down, their wings up, and they're just looking big. And they're clicking their beak. They're just making as much noise as they can, looking as big and scary as they can. And it's pretty effective. I mean, that's a wild-looking critter. It's similar to what we saw earlier with the bittern. That one, as far as what kind of an owl that is, it's some sort of a horned owl, so like it's related to the great horned owl. Its coloration to its facial disc doesn't look to be a great horned owl. I'm not sure which one it is. If you know, please let me know. Eventually, we'll probably do a full phylogeny maybe of all of the owls, and so I'll be able to tell you a little more after I've dug into the owls a bit more.
What the hell? What is that, Mom? Ma, you see this?
No. Holy
What
the is that?
What is happening?
Okay. So that is a black sea hare, which is a giant sea slug. Now, the nudibranchs are also often called sea slugs. I'll probably need to dig into all of the gastropods eventually, because slug is sort of just a name for like any of them that don't have shells. These are more closely related to land snails than they are to the nudibranchs. But it's a totally non-dangerous animal. You can pick them up and handle them. Make sure you identify it correctly, because there's some crazy stuff in the ocean. But they're algae eaters. They mostly feed on kelp, so you find them like in California, and anywhere you find kelp, you're gonna find these big old sea hares. But it really took off, didn't it? I was wondering if it was alive for a second there. So cool. Okay, so that is a female blanket octopus. Ask me how I know.
How do you know?
Okay, well, I'm so glad. Yeah, so for one thing, it's got the blanket. Males don't have that. Females are also at least 10,000 times the size of the males. At least among organisms that large, I think it is the greatest amount of sexual dimorphism anywhere. And sometimes it's way more than 10,000 times. They're like the male is much smaller than a walnut, and the female is several feet long. They are, and this scares me if they're ever in a Who Would Win book, immune to the venom of man-o'-wars. And when they're young, or males all their life, and young females, they will take the tentacles of man-o'-wars and use them as weapons, both offensive and defensive weapons. Anyway, I suspect a man-o'-war will probably kill them in a Who Would Win book. I want to say one thing before we wrap up. Last time in unidentified animal identification, there was an animal that I identified as being a fossa, or if you want to pronounce it in a more Malagasy way, a fusa. Some people pointed out that it may be a jaguarundi, and I have spent a lot of time looking at it, and I don't know. I bet jaguarundis are seen more often, and the coloration seems more right for a jaguarundi, but the face shape doesn't. Seems more fossa-ish. And so you should totally check that video out and let me know your thoughts on that one, because I'm still on the fence about it. But overall, that was a ton of fun. Should we do this again? And if we do, what categories should we have? As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.
A man once released a smiling baby shark while out at sea, not expecting it to repay the favor. A year later, while diving, he encountered a shark that nuzzled his face. Recognizing the familiar smile, he realized it was the same shark he had freed. Delighted to see each other again, the man began feeding the shark delicious treats. Whenever he went diving, the shark greeted him with a big smile and sometimes even playfully cuddled up to him. Occasionally, the shark would mistake someone else for the man, rolling its eyes before swimming away. Their bond grew strong, with the shark sharing its catches and even gifting the man its old teeth. Then, the shark disappeared for a while, only to return with a surprise. Baby sharks. One of the little sharks brought the man a spiral-shaped object as a token of gratitude. But what exactly was this mysterious gift?
Whew, oh man. Well, hi there. Some of you may be thinking, didn't you guys just release an awesome TikTok Reacts video? And yes, we did. It was one of our most popular videos ever. Maybe the most popular ever. But one of the TikTok videos depicted an idiot getting bitten by an iguana. If you've seen it before, you probably remember this. And apparently, that was too much for YouTube. So the entire hour-long video was demonetized. And just so you know, he lived and didn't get stitches. Though the scars on his arm from the bite suggest that he probably should have. Anyway, this came as quite a blow to our channel. We put a lot of time and effort and money into producing these videos, and so to have it be demonetized was pretty devastating. So we're striking back by releasing this video. We've removed the idiot and replaced him with not one, but 3 all new videos for you guys. So thank you so much for helping us fight back against this censorship. This one, of course, is bigger and better than the last. So take that, YouTube! But first we've got to talk about this shark video because it is a doozy. I've been seeing a lot of videos like this lately where they take a lot of really neat footage and they compile it into one story as though that's the story that happened, and that's not the story that happened. And I have come to understand over the last several years, especially as I've begun, filming videos myself, that the wildlife documentaries that I grew up watching as a child were actually probably compiled somewhat like this and not based on the way that actual events played out in many cases. But this one is particularly egregious. So let's watch this one more time because there are so many different kinds of sharks and other fish in this video that we're definitely going to need to start and stop a few times just to find out what they all are. Okay, so this first shark that we're looking at here is a baby 7-gilled shark. And you can tell this a few ways. One of them is 7-gilled sharks are very spotted like this. You look at how different the sizes of the 2 lobes are on the caudal fin, the tail. So it's got one extremely, like thresher shark level top lobe, and then this tiny lower lobe. So that's another thing that shows it's not one of the sharks that we look at later, how different that is. Look at how far back the dorsal fins are, right? Like you can see most of its back, no dorsal fin at all. And then these guys, these 7-gilled sharks, that kind of smile that it's like a Muppet sort of a smile. That's very normal for a 7-gilled shark. And so this is a perfectly normal looking baby 7-gilled shark. Okay, so the second shark here is a lemon shark. I think I've seen more footage of this one. So he's got some sort of a mouth deformity. I don't know what caused it. That's got him smiling sort of like a 7-gilled shark smiles all the time. I know this particular lemon shark is fairly well known. I think he lives down in Florida and people dive with it regularly. It's a very social shark, possibly because it has difficulty feeding in other ways, and so getting food from divers might be kind of what it's doing to survive. I'm not sure about that. But a very different shark. You can look at, if nothing else, the placement of that dorsal fin is going to give it away. So that's shark species number 2 in this video so far.
Seeing the familiar smile, he realized it was the same shark he had freed. Delighted to see each other again, the man began feeding the shark.
This is a tiger shark. So this is the third shark species we're seeing. I mean, you can already see it doesn't have the smile anymore. But tiger sharks have that very flat rostrum, so a very kind of squared off nose that's really distinctive to tiger sharks. Not to mention, again, location of the dorsal fin, and I think as we get a better look, you'll start to see some of the stripes too that a tiger shark has.
Delicious treats. Whenever he went diving,
Okay,
the
so we're
shark
back to the
greeted
shark.
him with a big smile and sometimes
now
even
here's tiger
playfully
shark.
cuddled
A tiger shark, anyway.
up to him. Occasionally, the shark would mistake someone else for the man, rolling its eyes before swimming away.
This is all tiger shark.
Their bond grew strong, with the shark sharing its catches and even gifting the man its old teeth. Then, the shark...
And that would be a great white shark. So what is that? 4 species of sharks so far. I don't know. This great white just came out of nowhere. Totally unnecessary to introduce a great white into the equation, but here we are.
disappeared for a while, only to return with a surprise. Baby sharks.
This is the worst part of all. This whole thing is an insult to anybody who knows anything about sharks. But these baby sharks, those aren't baby sharks at all. Those are remoras, which are not only not the babies of that shark, they're not sharks. They're not closely related to sharks. Those are more closely related to you than they are to sharks. They are a ray-finned fish, which is a type of bony fish. Their first dorsal fin is modified into kind of like a suction cup sort of a thing. So they a lot of times attach themselves to sharks and whales and other large marine animals and hitch a ride. It's a form of commensalism in which you've got one individual that benefits and it doesn't seem to do any noticeable harm to the other one. So it doesn't harm the sharks that the remoras are with them, but those certainly are not the babies of that shark. So this might be the worst part of this. Probably is, but the bad isn't over yet.
One of the little sharks.
Okay, so this shark here is a horn shark, which is not closely related. It is eating an egg of another closely related species of shark. So this is what, shark species number 5. We got 7-gilled shark, lemon shark, tiger shark, great white, and now a horn shark with also another species of shark's egg. So that's 6 shark species and remoras. So 6 shark species and one thing more closely related to you.
Brought the man a spiral-shaped object as a token of gratitude. But what exactly was this mysterious gift?
Okay, so that gift, by the way, that mysterious gift, is a shark egg. And interestingly enough, the horn shark is the first shark species depicted there that actually lays eggs. The others are all live bearers of some sort. But I don't know if they're saying that it was the egg of that shark originally. I thought they were saying it was that shark's egg. It's just a gift. But that is also a shark egg. So anyway, a lot going on with that video. But now I want to get kind of to the meat of this video. And remember, we've still got a couple of other brand new ones woven in there for you. Mr. Jason, what do we have today?
We're going with 4 categories. Category 1 is scary animal encounters.
Okay.
Category 2 is amazing animal abilities. Category 3 is unidentified animals.
Yep.
And category 4, because you love them, snapping turtles.
Yeah, yay. All right, let's get started.
Caught us up, and this turtle, big showdown, and I'm right in the thick of it. Oh no! Oh! Holy Oh, this is intense. They're underneath me. Look, the tiger's got the turtle underneath me. Oh, I don't know if I'm in the best position right here. Oh, I'm between the tiger and the turtle. Uh-oh. Oh! What?
Okay, so that one was dangerous. So that was a paddleboarder in the middle of at least a pursuit of a tiger shark chasing a sea turtle, which is not a place where you want to be on a paddleboard, particularly. Tiger sharks eat like all sorts of animals. And that said, about 20% of their diet is just sea turtles. They really are quite good at eating sea turtles. They're one of the primary predators of adult sea turtles. But they are still a gape-limited predator, which means that what they can eat has to be able to fit into their mouth. And that is why the turtle is behaving the way that it is. So you'll notice when a sea turtle is being pursued by a shark, they turn sideways and face them on the upper part of their shell towards the shark. And it's really difficult for a shark to get any sort of purchase when it's sideways like that. If they were able to get the turtle from the side or the back, anything like this, it can easily bite. But up like that, it's extremely difficult. And so that is a very, very effective strategy for the turtle. However, if it's doing that around your paddleboard, you've now got a shark that is totally focused on getting food, and it's probably more likely to get purchase on your paddleboard than it is on the turtle itself, which is exactly what happened there. And that is not a situation I'd want to be in. So I would say immediately, probably the biggest risk is to your feet. And then once a shark has injured you and you're bleeding in the water, you're probably not in as much danger as you would think. That shark's already in a feeding response, and sharks don't tend to deliberately predate upon people. So they don't usually eat humans. However, they do sometimes. Usually though, people that die from shark bites, it's just due to shock and loss of blood, because an accidental shark bite of this nature would still be quite catastrophic. That said, so this is like a really bad situation to be in with a tiger shark, which is certainly top 3, probably top 2 most dangerous sharks in the world. But all that said, sharks only bite like 70 people a year. Unprovoked bites. There are a few dozen more that happen because people are harassing a shark. But they don't bite people very often. But we're still talking tiger sharks, total fatalities per year with millions of people in the ocean. 5, probably fewer than 5 tiger shark related fatalities. So, was he in danger? Yeah. Could he have died? Yeah. Could he have been severely injured? Even more likely. But tiger sharks and just sharks in general are not nearly as dangerous as we think of them as being.
I don't want to see this as something like this.
Stay still, stay still! Stay still! Just sit and go past!
That's cool.
That's a lifetime experience for you.
Woo!
Head back out of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Woo. That keeps you on the edge of your seat, doesn't it? So those are orcas swimming by a couple of children. There is a reason that orcas don't kill people. And that reason is because they don't want to. That's all that stops them. Based on our historical experience with orcas in the wild, those children are in no danger. Nobody has ever been confirmed to have been killed by a wild orca. So in that way, this is just a totally rad thing. I see videos all the time of people on kayaks and things that have orcas swim up to them or swim past them, and they're usually very nervous, and the reason for that is because those orcas could kill them so easily if they wanted to. But again, there are no officially recorded instances of orcas killing people. However, it is hard for me to imagine an animal that is more capable of killing you both in or even near the water than an orca if it wanted to. And so, just any time that you have to entirely trust your life to something whose could kill you and whose culture you don't understand at all. This could be a person. It's scary. It's a scary encounter because it's just totally out of your hands, right? And those kids, they were totally fine, and they had that's going to be an awesome experience to share for the rest of their lives. I would love to have that story to tell when I was a kid, but man, if I was a parent on the shore or one of those kids, that would be terrifying. That'd be terrifying. So, all right, what's next?
The next category is amazing animal abilities.
All right.
The immortal jellyfish is a small jellyfish species native to the Mediterranean Sea. When threatened, injured, or faced with adverse environmental conditions, the jellyfish can transform back into its juvenile polyp stage, effectively starting its life cycle over again. The immortal jellyfish can repeat this process indefinitely, making it biologically immortal. The jellyfish's size ranges from 5 millimeters to 1 centimeter in diameter, and it feeds on planktonic organisms, small fish, and other jellyfish.
So I'm going to start by just saying, and I don't think this matters all that much, but I don't think any of those were actually immortal jellyfishes. That was just stock footage of random jellyfishes. But immortal jellyfishes are real, and they're really cool. So jellyfishes in general have a really interesting life cycle. It's really weird, actually. So the way that it starts, you can start at any point, but we'll start with sperm and egg. Okay, so there's a fusion of a sperm and an egg into a zygote, just like any sexually reproducing organism. That zygote begins to develop. It starts to do cell divisions. It grows into an adult jellyfish, which is settles on the bottom, and it sits there, and it's usually very small. It's physically attached to the bottom, and it sits there kind of like a sea anemone. It's called a polyp. So this is the polyp phase of the jellyfish. Doesn't look like anything you'd normally associate with being a jellyfish. That polyp then begins to form kind of these little plates. It's called an ephyra. So the little larval jellyfish is called an ephyra, and those bud off, and it'll bud off a whole bunch of them. They kind of come off in a stack that's at the end of the polyp. And each one of those buds off. And those are asexually produced by the polyp. Okay? So the polyp then buds off these ephyra, and they swim off, and they grow over months or years until they become what you would usually associate with being a jellyfish. And that's called the medusa stage. And so the medusas are big, and they get together and they reproduce sexually. So they're the ones that make the sperm and the eggs. And those reproduce, with each other. A bunch of these medusae, they reproduce with one another, and then their offspring are the new polyps. So the medusas produce polyps, and the polyps produce medusas. It's an alternation of generations. Okay? That's the way that it usually works. However, in the immortal jellyfish, their medusa stage can then settle back on the bottom and be a polyp again. And then that polyp can bud off more medusae later on. And then those medusae could potentially resettle. And so arguably, this individual jellyfish, instead of being a polyp that makes a bunch of medusae but eventually dies, and then a bunch of medusae that make a bunch of polyps but eventually die themselves, instead of doing that, it can switch between being a polyp and budding off a bunch more medusae, which are asexually reproduced. And which one's the original? Which ones are clones? Who's to say? And then they can settle right back down. And so they can arguably live forever. Now, along those same lines, obviously tons of individual polyps and medusae are dying in this immortal jellyfish. But again, when a medusa settles, is it the original polyp resettling, or is it not? And then when it buds off, which one of the new medusae are the original polyp? It's really difficult to say, and so that's why an argument can be made that it's immortal. Along those same lines, an argument can be made that the first universal ancestor of all life, and at the very least, the last universal common ancestor of all life, has never died. Because whenever I have a cell division, whenever a cell division happens, okay, now I've taken one cell, I've divided it into two cells. First it duplicates, all the things in it. Then it divides, it has cytokinesis. Which one's the original and which one's the new one? No way to say. All of the rest of life is just a result of subsequent cell divisions. An argument could be made that all of your cells are the original cell, or certainly that one of your cells is the original cell, and I've arbitrarily assigned it throughout all the cell divisions that have ever happened that's the one. But all of your cells are the results of cell divisions that stem all the way back to that original common ancestor of all cellular life. So I can make, you can make an argument that this cell right here, that is the original life form still alive today, and it just happens to live in my finger. And I think that argument is just as solid as that the immortal jellyfish is truly immortal. Komodo dragons plan to kill a buffalo for 3 months.
Watch carefully, as after a month-long wait, the Komodo dragon finally feasts on buffalo meat. Let's see how the Komodo dragon brings down the wild buffalo. Despite being several times larger than the Komodo dragon, the buffalo's formidable size instills no fear in the reptile. A buffalo lies asleep in a nearly dried-up waterhole, while the Komodo dragon lurks nearby, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the buffalo's eyes, this small lizard poses no threat. However, its complacency soon costs it dearly. The dragon's bite causes only a minor flesh wound to the buffalo, but the sight of blood stirs the other dragons into action. Deciding to leave, the buffalo tries to avoid the nuisance of these little lizards. It seems the Komodo dragons have failed in their hunt, but their interest in the buffalo remains high. Wherever the buffalo goes, they follow. Days pass, and not only does the buffalo's wound fail to heal, but it also appears much weaker. The Komodo dragon, like a venomous snake, can secrete toxins. Although not as potent as those of snakes, they are lethal enough to kill. 2 weeks later, the waterhole is dried up. The dragons are enjoying a feast. In just 3 hours, the buffalo is reduced to a skeleton.
All right, so there was a bunch of stuff said there. So one thing, it talks about this being, like, what did it say, 3 months, and then maybe a month, and followed it for a couple of weeks. So I don't know how long, but over a long period of time, they're working on killing and then eventually eating this water buffalo. Also, and this has been something that I've only heard about more recently, is this venom that's lethal enough to kill. So, like I said, I've heard about this basic hunting strategy from Komodo dragons my whole life. I remember watching documentaries about this when I was a kid. Only recently, really in the last few years, have I began to question this narrative. One of the things that really has been interesting in recent years is the switch to talking about venom, how Komodo dragons are venomous, versus when I was a kid, there was no discussion of Komodo dragons being venomous. The question was about the bacteria in their mouths that they would bite, and they have so much nasty bacteria and like rotting flesh in their mouths that it causes sepsis and they die. And so that was fine until I started to know a lot more about monitor lizards and ecology, and I just started to ask some key questions. For one thing, monitor lizards, they don't usually hunt this way. This isn't how monitors eat. Usually what a monitor lizard will do is it will overpower some prey, kill it right then, and then eat it. They're not strategizing for like weeks and months in advance and thinking, okay, I'm going to injure this now, then the bacteria in my mouth is going to go into effect. I'm just going to track it all that time, and then eventually I'm going to have a big meal. I really, I can't think of anything that hunts like that. Maybe there is something that does. I can't think of anything that hunts that way. But that doesn't mean that they don't. They could be the first. So I had a couple of questions. And my first question was, are the water buffalo native? Because they're kind of a big mammal for an island. Mammals tend to get smaller on islands. Reptiles often larger, which is why the largest lizards in the world live on an island. But it's weird to see such big buffalo because it's just hard to have a sustainable population of large mammals on a small island. And as I started to look into this, the answer is no. The water buffalo are not native to the Komodo Islands. They were introduced by humans. The same thing is also true for the large deer and wild pigs that they eat. So there are other large ungulates out there on the islands in addition to the water buffalo. All of them were introduced by humans within the last few thousand years. But that said, before the introduction of these animals, there was a relatively large herbivore that was a mammal that lived on these islands, and it was a relative of elephants called a stegodon. So they also, I think, had island dwarfism, so they were small for elephant relatives, but still a fairly large mammal. So the Komodos have existed historically with fairly large mammals in their presence. So it is possible that they could have some sort of a hunting strategy for fairly large mammals. That's totally possible. That said, when you see them hunting buffalo now, they were showing them hunting adults, and obviously they will come up and bite an adult from time to time. Usually, though, what I see is them targeting juveniles, and that was likely also the case with the stegodons, that they would hunt juveniles, not necessarily adults. So that was my first question. The buffalo aren't native, but it is totally on the table that they are adapted to hunt large mammals. So the new question is, could the bacteria or the venom in their mouths kill a buffalo? And the bacteria have in recent decades kind of fallen out of favor as the explanation for the deaths of these buffalo, because as we've done analysis of the bacteria in the mouths of wild Komodo dragons, what we have found is that the bacteria are very similar to the bacteria in the mouths of other carnivorous animals. So they don't have a particularly unusual oral fauna going on in there. They are basically like any other carnivore when it comes to the bacteria in their mouths. However, in recent decades, we have gained more support for the concept of a whole clade of lizards called the Toxicophora, which would include the monitor lizards. And so an argument can be made that all of the monitor lizards are venomous, and you can extract compounds in the saliva of Komodo dragons that are venomous. Okay, they have some anticoagulant properties and some mild neurotoxic properties. So I can make an argument that humans are venomous because we've got digestive enzymes in our saliva. And so if you bite somebody, you're actually probably starting to do some very minor localized tissue damage with your saliva. How liberal do we want to be with the term venom? But if you're bitten by a Komodo dragon, the saliva can probably result in some localized swelling, other problems like localized blood clotting issues, and pain that's going to last for a few hours. But if you were ever bitten by a Komodo dragon, I would say that the thing you need to worry about is not particularly the mouth bacteria or the venom. It's just the teeth. There are no croc monitor teeth, hence my level of concern when I was interacting with croc monitors. But they will still deliver a lacerating, nasty wound. The kind of wound that is likely to put you into shock and possibly cause you to bleed out rather quickly. Now, of course, if you are a water buffalo and you instinctively flee to feces-laden mud holes after you've been attacked by a predator and you have a lacerated, nasty wound, you might die from sepsis sometime later. And when you die or are near death and you live on an island with Komodo dragons, they're going to eat you. Not necessarily the same dragon that bit you, but the dragons will make sure that your infection-laden corpse doesn't go to waste. So the takeaway is Komodo dragons bite stuff. When they bite stuff, if you're a water buffalo, it's probably going to get infected. And when you die, you will probably be eaten by Komodo dragons. But I don't think there's really any evidence that this is a hunting strategy that they have, that the same Komodo dragon is going to bite you and then wait you out until you die of sepsis. That's just not the way that it works. That was awesome. Okay. So that was a green heron and you know it's a green heron because they're notorious for this. He was using bait to fish, which is awesome. They'll use, I don't know what that one was specifically, but they use stuff like small sticks, feathers, insects, crusts of bread, which I think is impressive because it shows that, you know, they can figure out new tools. So it's not just that they have an instinct to throw sticks in there for reasons they don't understand. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're like, this'll work. And so they bait fish in, and when fish go to eat this food that they've thrown out there, fake food that they've thrown out there, they eat them. It's totally rad. Tool use in a non-corvid bird.
That is psycho. That is the creepiest looking thing I've ever seen. Oh yeah, he just moved.
Right, we're not doing this to harm him, just to see if he snaps.
Oh yeah, no, he's alive.
Oh,
Oh
That's gonna haunt me in my sleep
Can we
tonight.
keep looking to see if we can find a pair of spare underpants? That was creepy.
That's a good one. Okay, so that is what's called a jawfish. I don't actually know a ton about jawfish. They look a little bit like blennies, but I don't think they're closely related to blennies. They dig a burrow with their mouths. In fact, they do a lot of cool stuff with their mouths. So that burrow, and usually my guess is that this is low tide, and it's kind of a little bit stranded in its burrow. I think usually they hang out near their burrows. They come out, and then they'll quickly retreat into the burrow. But that one looks like it didn't have anywhere to go, which is probably why it's biting to defend itself. In addition to moving sand to make their burrow, they're also a mouth brooder. And this is actually the main way I've ever seen these. That one is really freaky looking, but as when they've got all their babies protected in their mouth, those are the main images I've ever seen of jawfish, and it's really quite adorable. So, you know, they'll have a ton of fry, and they're protecting them inside of their mouths, and they're not feeding or anything so that they can protect them. There are other fish that do this. A lot of the cichlid fish are mouth brooders, and you can usually tell a mouth brooding cichlid because the males have a spot the color of an egg on their anal fins. And this is important because, like most ray fin fishes, they've got external fertilization. And so the female lays all these eggs, and then she spins around and starts gathering them up in her mouth. And she sees that egg spot on the anal fin of the male, and she's like, oh, another egg I need to get. And she goes over to get that, and suddenly all the eggs in her mouth are fertilized.
I think they're even trying to run away.
The cubs are the ones that are going. The mother's now with the honey badger.
But you think the honey badger would run away when it got the opportunity? No way.
Byron, this is one.
Is it the honey badger?
Yep.
Get a stick.
I love that. So, you know, they're like, why didn't it run away? And by the end, when it does, it doesn't run away. It struts away. And those leopards have no interest in pursuing it. They were like, oh, geez, not that. Okay, so that was a honey badger, and looked to be a female leopard and her two large cubs trying to take down that honey badger, and it didn't work. I mean, you know, when I got to tell you, like, generally speaking, when a when a leopard has you by the back of the head and another leopard has you by the hindquarters, and they're stretching you in two different directions, like, it's over. That's how you die. But not if you're a honey badger. Honey badgers, obviously, I mean, it's getting bitten by leopards there. They've got skin like on and around their neck that's like 1/4 of an inch thick. It's really difficult for anything to penetrate it. And then that skin is also super loose. So you can grab it back behind the head as that mother leopard was doing, and it just rotates around and bites you on the face because that skin's so loose. Honey badgers, they're just tough. They're so tough. And that's also a good example of the fact that when you're dealing with predators, you don't have to win, right? That honey badger probably came out of that interaction worse off than the leopards did. You just have to be more trouble than you're worth. You know, the risk of serious injury was just too high. And that's also part of why it didn't just try to turn and run every time it got a chance. That was just going to result in it getting grabbed again. It just fought. It just came after leopards, and it's just like, it's fighting like crazy until the leopards show that it's like, oh, just please leave. And then it just struts off across the little stream. Like, yeah, that's what I thought. Because honey badgers are awesome. I love them. All right. So what's next?
All right, the next category is animal identification.
All right.
The first of many strange creatures we're looking at, the one featured in this video, uploaded to YouTube by channel Kiwi TV, is truly unlike anything we've seen before. And it's clear the person capturing the video felt the same way. Featuring an odd marine creature captured on video in a Chinese river, this short clip is worth considerable study. Featuring a creature similar in size and stature to an alligator or crocodile, this creature's long protruding snout and unique facial structure makes it clear that it's neither. While one user asserts that the creature is a river dolphin, these creatures usually have snouts that protrude further out from their faces and bodies that more closely resemble dolphins that live in the ocean. More eel-like than other common amphibians while being impressive in size, this creature's overall makeup has us stumped as to what it could be. Love to hear your thoughts on this one in the comment section below.
I'm pretty sure what that wasn't the greatest look, but I think that's a beaked whale. So I didn't even know about beaked whales until, it's been a while now, but they were kind of the cetaceans that escaped my knowledge for the longest, that I just wasn't aware of them until I was actually studying zoology, and it was just because I happened to notice them on a poster at the university where I was. But a lot of male beaked whales have these tusks that can kind of come up and go over the top of their rostrum. And so I think that's what you're seeing there on the side are the little tusks, and then the beak. There you get one shot where it really does look like the nose of a dolphin. And beaked whale, final answer. That's a tamandua, and I want one. You actually, it is possible to get one. Someday there will probably be a tamandua, the best pet mammal video. They're not the best pet mammal, but they're so cool. What they are is an arboreal anteater. And what it is doing there when it stood up like that, so they've got these big old, anteaters in general have these giant slashing claws that they use to tear open termite mounds and ant nests, and also, in this case, to climb. They climb with them, and so they're very serious claws. They also have no teeth. So, their bite is not something to worry about, but those big old slashing claws totally are. So it's standing up and doing a big threat display. They were chasing it, and it stood up and went, "Hey, I'll mess you up," all Wolverine style. But they're super cool. Those live in Central and South America. And I'm not sure if I've ever even actually seen one in person, but I love them. I love them. They're such a cool mammal.
Unknown shape-shifting animal.
All right, that looks like a fox on stilts, but what that actually is a maned wolf, which is the largest canid in South America. It is not itself a fox or a wolf, though, pretty soon when we do a video on all of the canids, we will discover that neither of those words mean much. But I'll explain that soon. But in a nutshell, this creature is more closely related to a gray wolf than it is to a red fox. But it is more closely related to a bunch of things that we call foxes than it is to anything else that we would call a wolf. They're most closely related to an animal called a bush dog, since the Falkland Island wolf is now extinct. But this is the tallest of all wild canids, and it's so tall because it lives in grasslands, and so that allows it to walk around and look over the top of things. Totally cool animal. Love them. Not a wolf, not a fox. It's a maned wolf.
I found this poisonous-looking animal behind a stone. Finally built up the courage to take a closer look. Anyone know what it is or how many eggs?
Okay, so that is a female skink. It looks to me like a 5-line skink, and I love 5-line skinks. For one thing, they are great moms. They will brood the eggs like that for 1 to 2 months, and they'll not only protect them from potential predators, they'll also make sure that they maintain the proper moisture levels for the eggs. And they have a whole lot of behavioral things that they'll do to make sure that the moisture levels stay right. They sometimes brood alone, like that one was doing. They also will brood in groups. And when they brood in groups, they share responsibilities. So some females will leave and eat and things like that, and then they come back and trade off, and other females take care of the eggs. It's really, really cool. To my knowledge, 5-line skinks, maybe all skinks, I don't know of any of them to be poisonous. But they do have a blue tail, and sometimes bright colors like that indicate to people this might be poisonous or otherwise something that you shouldn't tangle with. And the blue tail is really cool. Usually, so in adult male 5-line skinks in particular, look nothing like that. Juveniles do. Juveniles have the stripes and they've got the bright blue tail. Females usually maintain the stripes into adulthood, but that tail greatly fades. However, that one still had a pretty nice blue tail, so maybe she was a young female, or it could be a different species I'm not as aware of. Either way, the blue tail serves a very specific function, and that is it attracts the attention of predators. So it's actually doing the opposite of what you would want if it was aposematic coloration warning about being dangerous. It attracts their attention, and they've tested for this using clay models. So they would make clay models of skinks, and they would make different parts of the body bright blue like that, either the head, the body, or the tail. And then they would set them out, and they would come back and they would observe where those had been attacked by predators. Because they're clay models, they're soft clay, you could see all kinds of damage to whatever regions of the body the predators were going for. And the predators go for the blue parts. And this is beneficial for 2 reasons, having it on the tail specifically. One of them is, if a predator goes for your head, that can kill you. If it goes for your body, that can kill you. If it gets your tail, you can drop that and run away and live for another day. That's beneficial. Of course, it'd be more beneficial if the predator just didn't go for any part of your body. So having a conspicuous tail on its own is not necessarily great, even though you can drop it. Here's the thing, though. If your head was blue and it swipes for your head and misses, it's still going to get your body. If your body's blue and it swipes and misses, it's still going to get your tail. But if your tail is blue, not only can you drop that, but it's the tailing edge of you. If they swipe and miss it all, they've missed you entirely. And so having something that draws their attention to not only the part you can drop, but the last part of your body that they could possibly grab has been very beneficial historically, especially for young skinks. Is it similar to the Loch Ness Monster? Okay, so what that looks like to me... so what I know it is a leopard seal. It looks like a very hungry leopard seal, but that could have just been a camera angle. What it is clearly not the Loch Ness Monster, though I suppose it's very unlikely, but probably more likely that the Loch Ness Monster is a leopard seal than a plesiosaur. So maybe it is the Loch Ness Monster. But whether or not it is the Loch Ness Monster, an argument can certainly be made that leopard seals are monsters in their own right, especially if you are a penguin, a cephalopod, or another seal. I would say the only thing scarier if you're one of those things are orcas and people. And just for the record, wild leopard seals have more confirmed kills of humans than wild orcas. So, this is a cool thing. I am impressed that they did have the right location, because these do live around Antarctica, and that's pretty much it. That's a sloth. I couldn't see its hands or its face well enough to tell you what kind of sloth it is. But sloths, this is often surprising to people, sloths can swim. And they often do this, especially when they're searching for a mate. Sometimes there's not a mate in your tree. You got to get elsewhere. And so they can swim. They'll swim to find a mate. Now, since I can't tell you which kind of sloth this is, I'll at least give you 2 great sloth facts. First one. 2-toed and 3-toed sloths look a lot alike, so much so that I can't tell which one this is. Though if I had to guess, no, I don't know. Okay, but so they act very similar, and they look very similar, but they're only very distantly related. They both appear to have independently evolved from terrestrial ancestors. So they shared a terrestrial ancestor, and they are both 2 separate lineages that have evolved to a very similar arboreal lifestyle. Because that's fun sloth fact number 1 for all your sloth dinner parties. Sloth fact number 2, all mammals, including things like giraffes, whales, platypuses, dugongs, all mammals have 7 neck vertebrae. Except for manatees, which only have 6. Again, dugongs have 7, but manatees only have 6, and sloths. 3-toed sloths, depending on the species, have 8 or 9 neck vertebrae, cervical vertebrae. And 2-toed sloths, just to be contrary, have somewhere between 5 and 7. So some of them do have 7, but some of them have 5 or 6. Because sloths are crazy. If you saw the second part of our phylogeny of insects, you already know what this is. But for those of you who don't, it's a Dobson fly. And this one, you can tell easily, you can tell from 40 feet away, because of the size of it, that this one is a male. And it's actually not because of the size, though that'll help you identify it. It's because of those ginormous mandibles. You only see those on the males. And so that is an obvious Dobson fly. Anybody who knows what a Dobson fly is can tell you that's a Dobson fly, but not everybody knows what a Dobson fly is, and now you do. That is some tight spinning. Woo! There you go. Look at that. Looks like a seagull, doesn't it? So, I wish I could tell you more about exactly which species that is, or even which group. I need to dig into the true eels, but that is a true eel of some sort. So not like electric eels are actually a knife fish. They're not an actual eel. This is a true eel, like a moray, but I don't think that's a moray. But eels, this sort of death rolling, and they roll way faster than crocodilians and things. This sort of a death roll is a very common hunting technique for true eels in general. They don't have anything else really to rip stuff. So when they want to tear pieces off of things or just incapacitate and kill things, they bite on and they just spin like crazy. And I think what it's hunting there, I mean, it could be a lot of things. Like I know they'll grab bobbit worms and stuff like that and roll them right out of their burrows, and they'll roll pieces off of other things. This is the way that eels tend to kill stuff. But I think what those were hagfish. And if they're hagfish produce this nasty, nasty slime. They produce just a little bit and it'll just gum up the mouth and the gills and all. It's a really effective defense. And so this eel, potentially by spinning, is getting that slime off of it too. I'm not sure. But that's what it looks like to me. So that is some sort of true eel hunting what looks to me to be a hagfish. But if you have more specific answers than those, I'd really like to know what they are. On it. A little water, just pat it. Just pat that. Jiggle it. I'm glad you got some jiggling in. That's just horrible. I've been seeing a lot of this, and it's awful. I mean, can you imagine what the hours leading up to this must have been like? I mean, you wake up in a stream, someone has been filming you sleeping, and while you were in that compromised state, someone, who knows who, glued a bunch of beans to your leg and then covered them with dirt. I don't even think it was the camera person, as they were just as respectfully silent as they were while they were filming you sleep. There was not a peep of laughter. Also no sign of fear or distress or desire to help you. They're just filming away like a wildlife photographer filming a predation event. Like they film river nappers wake up as bean art canvases every morning. I'd love to know what kind of glue they use, though. That seems like really good stuff. But those are beans.
Mutant animals found in Chernobyl. Deer. Headless deer was spotted running in Chernobyl. Goat. This goat was born with one eye.
All right, so we're getting a 2-for-1 this time. Surprisingly, unlike the last one, neither of those videos are fake. Those are both real videos of real living animals. The first one is a deer. Specifically, it's a moose. It's looking away from the camera as it runs. That's why we can't see its head, but it does have a head. I see no reason to suspect that it was filmed anywhere near Chernobyl. Though there are moose in that part of the Ukraine, so it's possible. But a nuclear disaster isn't the only reason that a moose might be rubbernecking. That's all I'm saying. The second one, though, that really is a goat with one eye. It's actually a pretty textbook case of a terrible and fatal condition called cyclopia, which happens in goats and humans, as well as many other species. It happens in sharks. It happens, all sorts of mammals all over the place. It impacts not only the development of the eyes, but also the mouth and nose. You might have noticed that goat, it wasn't just that it had one eye, its nose is kind of missing. A lot of times they develop inside of the mouth or in weird locations relative to the eye. It causes problems that usually lead them to die within a few hours or less of being born. As far as the causes, it's linked, I know, to some plants, but kind of like the last one, I see no reason to suspect that it has anything to do with the Chernobyl disaster. But it is a terrible condition and something that's real.
Just watching this cow pee, and then all of a sudden there's a llama deer, and I didn't even know what this thing is. Anybody tell me what this thing is? I'm gonna think it's a leer until somebody tells me what it is. An antelope? It's probably an antelope.
Llama deer. We got two or three options there. There's either it's llama deer or antelope, or llama deer or antelope. What it is none of those things. It is a pronghorn, which is the second fastest land animal. And the thing is, they live in North America. which is not anywhere close to the fastest land animal, which would be the cheetah, which can lead to the big question of how did the second fastest land animal end up, well, why does it need that speed? And the most likely reason is because they originally evolved in the presence of the American cheetah. Now, the American cheetah, to my understanding, is not actually super closely related to the African cheetahs. I think it was more closely related to mountain lions, but in fairness, mountain lions are fairly closely related to cheetahs. So let's put it this way. It is more closely related to the African cheetahs than mountain lions are to lions. Quite a lot. So, but it was very fast. These guys are the second fastest, just top speed of any land animal, and the fastest over relatively long distances. They can maintain high speeds for much longer than an African cheetah can. That said, like I already mentioned, it's not an antelope. It's no more closely related to an antelope than it is to a deer, and it's more closely related to a whale than it is to a llama, so it's not a llama deer for sure. That said, their closest relatives are giraffes and okapis. And really, when you get a good look at a pronghorn next to a true antelope, you'll notice a lot of ways that they're very different. But one way that they're different from antelope and deer, and maybe more similar to giraffes, is when you get a good look at their pronghorns. So deer have horns that are bony and do not have any sort of a sheath on the outside, at least once they've fully developed, and then they are shed annually. Horns, conversely, have a bony core and then a sheath on the outside, and they don't shed any of that. What giraffes have are called ossicones, and those have a bony core that is covered in skin. Pronghorns, now here's another thing, horns never fork, and antlers frequently do. Okay, so those are the three things you're probably most familiar with. Pronghorns have a bony core covered in skin, so far it's just a typical ossicone. But then it has a hardened sheath on the outside that forks, sort of like an antler, but it's not. It's not an antler. It's made of keratin, like your fingernails, or like the sheaths on the outer parts of horns. They're not bony like antlers. So it's got a keratinous sheath on the outside that forks and is shed annually. So they shed the outer sheath, leaving them with basically normal giraffe-style ossicones once they shed that sheath off of the outside. So it's more ossicone-like than it's like anything else. But when you see them with the sheath intact, it looks like a horn antler. And so not a llama deer, but it does look a little bit like a deer antelope. But again, closer to being a giraffe. All right, so what now?
The next category is snapping turtles.
Yay! All right. Snapping turtle number 1.
Our big snapper had a baby. From the moment he was born, he had to fend for himself in the wild. Their moms don't take care of him. They're called hatchlings. He'll live 20 to 45 more years. When he grows up, he'll get rid of all the dead animals in our pond. We were about to release this guy, but he escaped on the glizzy in his bowl. So long, buddy.
So that one is not a snapping turtle or a baby turtle. I couldn't see its carapace, which is the top shell, very well. But from what I could see, I mean, it's definitely some sort of mud or musk turtle. Looks to me like a common musk turtle or something similar to that. They are very closely related to snapping turtles, but they're smaller. They're considerably smaller than snapping turtles. And on top of being smaller, you can tell them apart because they've got a very short tail, where the snapping turtles have very long tails. They've got a very big plastron, where the snapping turtle plastron of both of the major groups of snapping turtles, it's kind of shaped like a cross. And then they've got a shorter neck than a common snapping turtle. And so there's a lot of things that are different about them. Again, it is a close relative of snapping turtles, but it is not a snapping turtle. And because they're so small, that one actually may have been an adult, or at least a very large juvenile. All right, hoping for a snapping turtle this time.
No.
Those things are as old as
Hey, what you doing, little man? What you doing, little man? You a little pet. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how else that was supposed to go. Okay, so that one was a snapping turtle. And that was something I've never done. I've never been bitten by a turtle of any kind. But I will tell you that that snapping turtle is not only a snapping turtle, that's my favorite of all turtles. That is a snapping turtle. That would be one of the 3 species in the genus Calidra. And there is another genus. Okay, so there's also the genus Macrochelys, which are your like alligator snapping turtles. So there are 3 species of relatives of the common snapping turtle. That one that look to be in the United States. So that is probably the common snapping turtle. There's also a Central American and South American snapping turtle. Other than where they are, I would have a hard time telling you which one is which. I've never seen the latter 2. But Macrochelys, alligator snapping turtles, there's 2 species now, but it's very difficult to distinguish between the 2 of them. And it's very easy, though, to tell them apart from Calidra. And so a few differences. One of them is the long neck. That long neck, quick snap like that can only be Calidra. On top of that, their shells tend to be much smoother, and they don't get quite as large, though they do get potentially very big, like 50 pounds. So they're still huge. The Calidra do not hunt with the worm tongue lure. They're suction feeders like a mata, whereas the Macrochelys, they have the short neck, but they just sit there with their mouth open and wiggle that little tongue worm around until something goes in there. And this is a crazy thing because alligator snapping turtles are so big, but the Calidra have greater bite force. So if you had to pick one to be bitten by, you would actually want to pick an alligator snapping turtle. They live their lives like a bear trap, and they basically need strong jaws only to close the trap quickly. And you'll see them biting through stuff. Like people talk about rumors of them biting through broomsticks and things like that. I've never seen that. Anytime I've seen people doing demonstrations of the bite force of really any of the snapping turtles, it's usually soft things like hot dogs, cucumbers. Maybe the toughest thing I've seen them bite through is a carrot, and it seemed like they were struggling on that one a little bit. But Calidra, the common snapping turtles, have considerably greater bite force than Macrochelys. And I would not bet a finger that they can't bite your fingers off, but it's probably not as catastrophic as the rumors would tell.
All right, so we found this big old snapping turtle in this pond that we're dredging this head section on, and I'm gonna see if that old wives' tale about a snapping turtle biting a stick is true. Come on, bite the stick. Show everybody how big of a bite you got. Come on, bite it. All right. That turtle just looked at me like he wants to hurt me real bad, so I'm gonna leave him alone. You're right, that was kind of mean.
Like that takeaway. That turtle looked like he wanted to hurt me real bad, as evidenced by the fact that I tried to stick something straight into his mouth and he didn't bite it. I'm sticking a muddy stick on my face. Please go away. I want to point something out there. So that is an actual common snapping turtle. There's a couple things that I think are really interesting. One of them was how reluctant it was to bite. Snapping turtles, I'm getting the impression more and more all the time that they're really not all that inclined to try to hurt somebody. Something else, though, that I find really interesting, so that makes this not perfect evidence, is it is incredible to me how well many reptiles can discern an inanimate object from an actual part of your body. Like, there's all kinds of things. I mean, you can usually, take any wild snake and you could just poke it in the face with something inanimate, and it wouldn't strike or respond aggressively in any way. But if you tried to do it with your finger, even with something that doesn't have heat detecting capabilities, like it'll react totally differently. Yeah, you can do it with lizards. It's actually why there's a technique for catching lizards that I think is very, very poorly named. They usually call it noosing, but I would say that it is accurately lassoing. It's much more of a lasso. And I like, who was the PR person in charge of deciding what we should call this? So henceforth, lassoing. You can lasso a lizard, and the reason that it works is because with an inanimate object, they'll let you poke them right in the face. But if you tried to reach over there with your hand, they're not going to put up with that. And so you just basically take like a fishing pole with a little lasso at the end of it, and you just kind of go, and they'll let you put it right around their neck, and then you've got a lassoed lizard there. That's probably the easiest way there is to catch a live lizard. But anyway, he certainly didn't want to bite that stick, and arguably doesn't want to bite at all.
Jeez, that's a big turtle. Come down. Wow. And that turtle probably weighs close to 50 pounds. Now, the snapping turtle gets its name, of course, from that powerful bite. And those jaws are bone crushing. If I were to get my finger stuck into the mouth of that turtle, there's a good chance I would not be getting it back. One distinct feature that separates this turtle from other turtle species is its shell. Now, the top of the shell, whoa, watch out for that bite, is called the carapace. You can see just how massive this turtle truly is when I set it in water like that. But the underside of the snapping turtle, which is called the plastron, is very distinct. Do you see how small the underside of this turtle is? Their arms and legs are not capable of being tucked into the shell like other turtle species. That's why they have developed these incredibly defensive traits. Watch yourself, I'm bringing the turtle back down here in front. Okay, let me get it back up on my knee. That is an absolute dinosaur right there. As we know, turtles are in no way related to dinosaurs, but turtles and their ancestors have been on the planet for more than 200 million years. And you can see that just the evolutionary state of this turtle has not taken it far from prehistoric times. And one of the most terrifying things about a snapping turtle is that if you're in this environment and you come across those jaws and you get caught, you are alive when it begins to eat you.
So, for starters, and I think this is just a joke, but snapping turtles don't eat people. On the other hand, I've never actually heard of this happening. I'm sure it has happened, but I've never heard of anybody being bitten by a snapping turtle while it was in the water. In general, when you're in the water with a snapping turtle, a common snapping turtle like that one, they're very curious, and so they'll stay about 6 feet away from you and just watch you. But they're not prone to attacking people or anything like that. One thing that I want to correct really quickly is they are actually fairly closely related to dinosaurs, much more closely than anything like snakes and lizards, tuataras, things like that. There are two big lineages. One of them is the Lepidosauria. We'll be doing a full phylogeny of every family in the Lepidosauria that'll be coming out just a little bit later this year in November. But the other lineage is called the Archelosauria. And that includes just three things that are alive right now. Crocodilians, dinosaurs, which birds are the only surviving dinosaurs, but dinosaurs, and turtles. So they are more closely related to dinosaurs than anything else alive today except for crocodilians. Crocodilians are the only thing more closely related to dinosaurs. And it's still pretty distant. It goes back a long time. But a lot closer than a lot of things. People see Gus and they're like, "That he's a dinosaur." No, he's not. These are much closer. This is kind of a wild thing because snapping turtles do look positively primeval, right? They look prehistoric. And this group of turtles actually does date back to the late Cretaceous. So there were, things that you would recognize as being a snapping turtle living alongside Tyrannosaurus rex. They go back more than 66 million years ago. But turtles are at least 230 million years old. And that means that this snapping turtle body plan is actually a fairly recent turtle body plan. Having this long tail and this small plastron and stuff, that's not the ancestral turtle condition still preserved in the snapping turtle lineage. Those are derived characters for the way that they're living, if not now, in the very recent past, relatively. Like I said before, I wouldn't bet a finger that they can't remove a finger. I think that turtle seriously might have been able to remove a finger, which is why you shouldn't taunt it in its bite zone. Their strike is so fast, you can't actually react to the movement by the time that you have noticed the movement. It's too late. That said, all that said, so that is a very, very intimidating turtle. I also have evidence that they are completely misunderstood. And this plays a little bit. I mean, I loved them even when I thought I understood them correctly as monsters. But I don't think that's what they are at all. And if you want to see what that evidence is, now would be a great time to watch this video. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon. Well, that was the most Florida thing I've ever seen. Well, hi there. My name is Clint LOVES. I have a PhD in biology as well as a master's degree and an undergraduate degree in biology and zoology. With my wife, Leisha, I run a biology outreach called Clint's Reptile Room in Springville, Utah, which just celebrated its 5th anniversary. I'm an instructor of biology and a science communicator here on the YouTube channel Clint's Reptiles, which is where you are now, as well as in person at Clint's Life Science Academy. And about a year ago, thanks to your encouragement, I wandered onto TikTok for the first time. And while I still think that TikTok is a poison on our society, it was a great conversation starter. The videos we've made in response to those have been among the most viewed videos that we've ever made. And so, for the 4th time, I guess we're going back in. So Mr. Jason, what have you for us today?
We have 4 categories. Number 1, scary animal encounters. Number 2, amazing animal abilities. Number 3, unidentified animals. And because you love them, emerald tree skinks at number 4.
Yay.
So let's begin with scary animal encounters. I'd actually like to begin with you reacting to that alligator video that we just watched.
Okay.
And for each of these, I'd like to know what is going on and how much danger they were really in.
Okay, so should we watch the alligator again?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so this is a Florida man rescuing his puppy from an alligator. What's that? Look at that. It's okay. I want to go back and watch this one thing. Yeah, his whole face is underwater. But he didn't spit out the cigar at any point. Okay, so as far as what's going on here, I think this guy was probably out on a walk with his little puppy, and the puppy was grabbed by a young alligator, and so the puppy was obviously in tremendous danger. I think without this pretty amazing rescue, that dog was going to drown and probably be eaten by that alligator. And so it was in great danger. The man from that alligator wasn't in any sort of mortal danger. You know, like it's not going to kill him. It could have injured him, you know, somewhat severely. Like you could need stitches from what that alligator could do to you. Probably there's an outside chance you could lose a digit from an alligator that size. My bigger concern is honestly splashing around in a pond that has at least an alligator in it, because if that's not the big alligator, then you could have some trouble. Not that many people get killed by alligators in Florida, and a lot of people splash around in ponds. Alligators they're just not that prone to killing people, but that was probably the biggest danger, was some other alligator being drawn in by all the splashing. Wow. Well, you would never ever forget that. So that's somebody on the most amazing dive ever. There's humpback whales and orcas there, which, I mean, either of those animals are more than capable of killing a person. I think in reality, more people have been killed by wild humpback whales than by wild orcas. But if one was going to kill you deliberately, it'd be an orca. But there's no record of that, though they do disable ships with some regularity these days. I think they're the ultimate animal monster for a movie, because if orcas decided to start killing people, it'd be hard to get away from them. But yeah, so technically no real danger in particular from those two animals, though. Amazing. Absolutely. I mean, what a thing. What an experience. So, according to this, and I don't see a better explanation for what's going on here. This is a lady who encountered a spider in her car and simply bailed out. and I think my favorite thing is there's no evidence that she has any regrets about her decision, right? Like I can see you can freak out, you get out of your car. It's slowly wandering off now into oncoming traffic. You'd think at some point you're like, what am I doing? But she's just like, whew, good riddance to that. Like she is outie. And as far as how much danger she was in, it's very unlikely that the spider that would be in her car poses any really serious danger. So once she got out, she got on that median. She's probably about as safe as any pedestrian in that situation. I would say the main thing was she put a lot of cars in oncoming traffic in moderate danger. Like, her car was not going super fast. They don't look like they were going super fast, but I would say she got pretty lucky that the car made it through to hit a post without a head-on collision with something. So that's the real danger there. That was something. Oh dear. I'll start by saying I, as a kid, was a pretty big fan of James Bond, and that was one of my favorite scenes. Pretty amazing to see how they made it, and seems to me that was quite a bit of danger there. So that is a stuntman playing James Bond, running across the backs of live and at least relatively unrestrained crocodiles. They did show an alligator for a moment at the beginning, which would have been the safer alternative for animals to run across. If you must run across a large crocodilian, I would have done alligators. But those were crocodiles. You could tell from the shape of their mouths. I'm not sure exactly what species. And so they're all so evenly spaced and parallel and there for multiple takes. My guess is they're tethered somehow, but they're still reacting. They're turning on him and they're grabbing. And so the likelihood of him getting some sort of relatively catastrophic injury was definitely moderately high. And I'm interested also in the fact that some of the time he like fell down in the middle of all of the crocodiles and nobody came in there to help him out. So yeah, there's some real danger there. And what a scene. Hopefully the crocodiles were not permanently injured in any way by this, but pretty amazing. So that's the most dangerous thing I think we've seen so far. That is a person being attacked by an angry ostrich, and ostriches kill several people every year. So, I mean, you know, people often talk about the danger posed by things like cassowaries, which almost never kill anybody. Ostriches kill people every single year. Lots of people. And that person easily could have joined the list of people killed by an ostrich that year. Woo!
Oh my goodness.
Oh, here we go.
I'm still uncomfortable. Oh my God.
So, and maybe it's obvious because it wasn't attacking, but let's start off. That's a double wattled cassowary walking up to somebody on the beach. That is an animal that has killed people before, but in general, if you can avoid two things, if you can avoid attacking them, and if you can avoid falling down while having an aggressive interaction with one, they shouldn't kill you. I think only like maybe 2, maybe 3 people have ever been killed by cassowaries on record, whereas that many people are killed every year by ostriches. And so cassowaries, and you can see it's a curious bird. It's a lot smaller than an ostrich. The right kick can kill you, but I would much rather be kicked by a cassowary, honestly, than an ostrich. Show me your teeth. Okay. How can you not love them? So that was, for most of the video, a bunch of white-tipped reef sharks, which are not dangerous. They, during the day, usually do find a little place where they all hang out and rest like that. And then at the end there, I never got a good look at its teeth, but that's a porcupine puffer. You can kind of tell by the exposed spikes. So all puffers, or lots of puffers anyway, have spikes, but the porcupine puffers have the visible spikes even when they're folded down, or that you can see from the outside. We've actually got a whole video on puffer fishes and their close relatives. So anyway, that was really enjoyable, and thank you for that.
Okay, the next category is amazing animal abilities.
All right, let's do it.
This ant is a surgeon. It's actually performing an amputation to save another ant's life. What is this?
A center for ants!
Researchers from universities in Switzerland and Japan have observed that ants can identify and provide individualized care to their injured ant colleagues. These ants can evaluate if an injured limb needs to be amputated or just disinfected. Amputations primarily occur when there's an injury in the femur and seems to extend the injured ant's lives. And there's not a long wait to get medical care. On average, these amputations were performed within about 4 hours after the injury occurred. Ants even use some form of disinfection. They lick the wounds and produce an antimicrobial secretion that improves outcomes. This is the first time a species besides humans has been observed to perform these kinds of life-saving surgeries. Ants have always been amazing. They're super strong for their size, they have fascinating social structures, and they constantly demonstrate incredible intelligence. And now it turns out they might have better healthcare than us.
Well, that's quite amazing. I do think there was a real missed opportunity there to use the term amputation. Yes. But other than that, that's just super cool. I hadn't seen that before. But I have seen something similar in my own life. We actually talked about it in our video on black widows. But I had a black widow in my lab where I worked with burying beetles, and I would feed excess burying beetles to the black widow, and I had praying mantises and a big scorpion, and I didn't like to just put them in the freezer and see them go to waste. So anyway, one day though, the burying beetles are tough beetles, and the black widow got its leg bitten, and it was kind of bent at a funny angle. And the black widow backed away. It used its chelicerae to straighten out its bent limb, and then it cast the limb in silk. Then held the limb against its body, went back and dealt with the burying beetle, but kept that one limb folded in. And so it set and cast its own broken limb, which was crazy. And I still need to write a paper about that. I'm sorry. Whoa. Wow. Well, okay, so that's a European mantis on a hummingbird feeder taking down a hummingbird. And that is amazing. I mean, at first, I did not think that it was going to be able to overpower that hummingbird, but here we are. That's incredible. And terrifying. So that's an interesting fight to observe. I don't know exactly what starts it, but the video caption there was making a big deal about how strong the deer is, and that matters. That deer is strong. But I think more than anything, what you're looking at there is the difference in fighting styles between those two animals. And if you ever watch the way that rams fight each other versus the way that deer fight each other, it's a very different sort of combat. And it's made really obvious by the types of weaponry that they have. So the ram has horns, which are a bone core with a keratinous sheath around it, and it's continuously growing throughout their lives. So as they get older, those get bigger. They're not shed. And they're instruments for blunt impact. And so they'll rear up, and they just come in, they hit heads real hard once, bam! And then they kind of back up a little bit and just kind of like analyze. They're just like, poof. Okay, how was that? How'd you do? Do I want to take one of those again from you, or should I get out of here? But that's sort of it. Right, like if they kept pushing on each other, their head, they'd slip off of one another. The horns are not really good for continued pushing, It's about bang, one big hard smack, and then we'll reanalyze if I want to take another one of those from somebody as big and tough as you. Interestingly enough, the mountain sheep that live the longest tend to be smaller males that don't really engage in combat like that. You know, a lot of times you'll find skulls of big tough males that have split right down the middle from one of these hits. So taking a hit like that from a ram is incredibly powerful. And that deer could have had its antlers shattered in the moment of that initial hit. But once it survived the initial hit, after that, everything's deer. Because deer, I mean, you see it, their antlers are about locking together. They really don't do like a hard running bang with each other because they'd probably end up killing each other. You know, they'd end up with antlers in their eyes and piercing their heads and stuff. They kind of come together fairly gently a lot of the time. And then they push on each other. And so that's how they figure out who's the biggest and the strongest, is they just get into these pushing competitions with their antlers all locked up. Sometimes they end up stuck together and both end up dying, or one of them ends up walking around with a severed head of the other one because they couldn't get apart. But it's all about the pushing. So after that big hit, as far as the ram's concerned, it's like, all right, now we're in the analysis phase, and the deer's like, no, we're in the pushing phase now. And so the deer starts pushing, and the ram's just doesn't do that. That's not how rams do combat. It sort of reminds me of like if you had a competition. So when they set up MMA, they set that up to like figure out which fighting style was actually the best in combat, not just fighting against other people that are going to play by your same rules. And so I would like to see one of those people that does those slapping competitions up against, say, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu MMA fighter. You know, the ram is the slapper. So, you know, it comes up and goes, whap! And then, you know, it's expecting this time where they just stand there and look at each other. And that's when the MMA fighter just tackles you to the ground and starts fighting you. It's just like, well, this isn't how I fight. And that's exactly what was going on there. That's not how they fight. Look at the water dance. So that is a crocodile. It's a big male crocodile claiming that territory as his own. And when they do that, I mean, they bellow and they make these super low frequency sounds that can be heard for a really long distance. And I mean, you can hear it. The sound is so intense, though, it makes the water over their back dance. Sometimes when they're in the shallows, like it's insane how it dances. But you can see, I mean, his back was well under the water and the water was still dancing above it. Absolutely incredible. What a thing to see. I would love to see and hear that in person someday. Because, like, if you've ever been around just an emu drumming and you hear that low frequency, like you can feel it in your chest almost more than you can hear it. And that's just from an emu. Imagine something like that. Unbelievable. Okay, that is so intense, right? That's disturbing to see, but I don't see any evidence that this is actually an insect that is infected with any sort of neurological parasite. There are a lot of mind-controlling insect parasites from things like horsehair worms, which cause insects to drown themselves in water, to fungi such as cordyceps and it's like Ophiocordyceps, which mostly infect ants. But I guess the big thing here is I don't know any of these parasites that would hollow out their host like this. Plus, and like I said before, many of those are parasites of ants primarily, and this is a beetle. At least as far as I can tell, this looks like it's a beetle. It's missing some stuff, so it's a little harder to identify. So, but like I said, honestly, I don't think this is a parasite at all. I think this is probably an attack from a macro predator. If I had to bet money on what did this to this beetle, I would say something like a praying mantis. a praying mantis that ate most of the abdomen of this beetle before either getting full or releasing it for some other reason. I mean, like, I would bet money that the mantis that we saw earlier didn't eat that whole hummingbird. But the question here is, why is this beetle still walking around? And I think that has a lot to do with what is in the abdomen of insects, which is nothing exceedingly important in the short term. I mean, they've got their hearts in there, but they don't need their hearts as much as you do, because their blood, which is called hemolymph, doesn't transport oxygen like your blood does, just nutrients. So yes, without their hearts, their cells will eventually run out of energy, but not for a while. Much of their digestive system is in there too, so they won't process food anymore, but the energy wasn't going to make it to their cells anyway. Again, this will eventually be a problem, but if your abdomen was hollowed out by a giant macro predator, eventually starving to death would be the least of your concerns. Their reproductive organs are in the abdomen, so like this beetle's breeding days are over. But again, that probably wouldn't be on the top of your list of immediate problems. In your case, your blood would all pour out as it's highly pressurized in tubes. And so even if your lungs were still present, oxygen would not reach your cells and you would die very rapidly. Well, the beetle has an open circulatory system that is not highly pressurized and again does not transport oxygen. That is delivered by a system of tubes called a tracheal system. Now the inlets to the tracheal system, which are called spiracles, are generally in the abdomen. But if, even if those are not intact, well then I would suggest that this beetle has the biggest spiracle ever right now. Its entire back. In other words, this beetle is mortally wounded, but it has no injuries that would cause rapid death. It might walk around like this for a long time, until the nutrients in its remaining hemolymph and other tissues become depleted and it collapses and dies. But I don't see any evidence that this is a case of a neurological control by some parasite. Whoa. Wow. Oh, man. Both? Oh my goodness. What you playing now, buddy? Wow! Okay. So that's a cormorant swallowing two enormous fish. Cormorants, they are so funny. So that one looks like it's some sort of rescue. It's missing a wing. But my gracious. So cormorants are funny birds anyway. I mean, obviously there's a lot that's amusing about that bird. But cormorants, they don't have any sort of oily covering that prevents their feathers from becoming waterlogged. And so they're a diving bird. They'll dive into the water, they'll catch fish, they pop out, they swallow them like that. But they become waterlogged, and so they'll need to stand and dry out for a long time. I can pretty much guarantee that even if that cormorant had two wings, after that meal, it's not going to be able to fly for a while. It's just going to weigh too much, and it'd be waterlogged. That's almost unbelievable to watch. And I will tell you, so I've told this story before, but I watched an anhinga one time. An anhinga is a close relative of the cormorant. I think they're each other's closest relatives. And it's a really similar bird. It's got a more spear-like bill, and they swim around underwater and they spear stuff. But they then swallow it like that. And it was while I worked at Disney's Animal Kingdom, and it was hunting an African cichlid that was in the hippo pool. And it was like the biggest cichlid in there. And it had speared it, so it's like, well, that's a shame, but there's no way it's going to be able to swallow that fish. And it popped up, and just like with that first one, it wasn't even a problem. It was, barely an inconvenience. Unbelievable. The anhingas they call snake birds, and obviously those adaptations that allow them to swallow huge prey are very similar to what you find there in the cormorants. And I like to imagine that this is what Spinosaurus looked like eating its prey. Which, I mean, it's still no T-Rex, but that makes Spinosaurus pretty darn cool.
The next category is animal identification.
All right. Let's do it. Let's see here. That's really amazing. Okay, so that creature, at first it looked fake when it was on the other side of the truck, but once I get a better look at it, that is an Asian animal called I think it's called a takin, and they are the closest living relatives to the mountain goat, which I actually had an awesome experience with mountain goats recently. Now I'll post some pictures, maybe some video from that experience on Instagram this week sometime. So if you want to check us out on Clint's Reptiles on Instagram, there it'll be. But mountain goats are not true goats. Goats are actually domesticated ibexes. But these guys, the takins, they're actually almost as big as a muskox, which is also a close relative of theirs, so not as close as the mountain goats. And actually, they're both closer related to actual goats than they are to muskoxen. But anyway, that is a really cool animal. And it kind of reminds me, we still need to do a video about the ungulates. So if you'd like to see that sooner or later, let me know. Okay, wait. So that first one, I think is just a koi. I think that's just a koi. I'm going to back it up in a minute. Yeah, I think that's a koi that just happens to have a pattern that looks a little bit like a face on its head. Like a long fin koi. And then the second one, this one, when I first saw it, I thought it kind of looked like a wolffish. But I realize now that what I thought it had two big forward-facing eyes, and wolffish don't quite have that, but they're kind of forward-facing, and it's got these big teeth. But as I'm looking at it more closely, those are the wrong eyes. Those are not eyes. The eyes are in a kind of a more normal side of the head fish position. It's just got kind of a dark spot with a little white dot there in the front. And so this is a sheep's head. Is what this is. Like a sheep in wolf's clothing, I guess. Sheep's head are crazy because if you've seen pictures of them, you probably have seen pictures of them before, it's because they've got basically human-looking teeth. They've got many rows of teeth going back. So it's like if you bred a human and a shark, this is what you'd get. Rows of human teeth that they use to crush hard-shelled prey. So that's the second one. So we got a koi, a sheep's head, and the third one is fake made-up animal. It's sort of fortunate because right now, like all the AI fakes and stuff, if you know what to look for, like you can still tell. But like that first one, the takin, I thought that was an AI fake at first, and here in a few years, we're going to be seeing all sorts of unidentified animals that don't really exist, and it's going to be stupid. Is this the result of successful mammoth cloning? No. Very cool, though. Okay. This is not a super hard one, because there's only one living animal that could be, which is an Asian elephant. You can tell by the size of the ears that it's not either of the two African elephants. And when especially Asian elephants are younger, they've got quite a bit of hair to them. Sort of similarly to larger dinosaurs that may have been feathered when they were young. But then when they get very large animals, especially large endotherms like this, have a relatively small amount of surface area per unit volume. And so overheating is actually a bigger problem than staying warm enough. So while they're little and they've got more surface area per unit volume, a little bit of insulation sometimes is beneficial for them, but they don't tend to have it as adults. And that's why you've got semi-woolly baby Asian elephants. But by the time they're adults, you don't see much of that thick hair on them anymore.
This man is attacked by a strange interdimensional creature.
That is a problem.
It's some kind of shape-shifting creature.
All right. Darn interdimensional creatures always attacking people. So that's clearly a galliform bird. We've got a video about them, but okay. So if this is North America, I would say that's probably a turkey, but it looked a little small for a turkey, and it looked to be very territorial. So I think that's a bird called like a capercaillie. They're a European bird. They're the largest grouse, and they're a giant grumpy grouse. And they're really intense. They make intense sounds. They get a big hooked bill. An intense, awesome bird. I don't know of them to ever come from or go to another dimension. But they do kind of change form, so a shapeshifter maybe. Look at you run. Oh. Bar's kind of low for mystery animals this year, I guess. That'd be a skunk. What could have done that? A shark. There's great white shark with no tail I caught on camera. All right. So that thing does have no tail. But they never have tails. It's not a great white shark or any other kind of shark. It's actually more closely related to you. The most closely related to pufferfishes. It's a mola. And again, we have a whole video about them and their close relatives, but I love them. Often called the giant ocean sunfishes. They are super cool, always tailless, frequently up like that, kind of basking in the sun, hence the name. Whoa. Wait, I just checked that out. On the one, its leg separated from its wing. Built into the wing on the other one. So that is, of course, a bat raccoon, or a raccoon bat. It's what happens when you ask AI to mix a raccoon and a bat. Get a raccoon bat. Unknown creature caught on camera in Madagascar. Oh. That is not Madagascar. All right, so that'd be a skunk again. This is the year for skunks. And since there are no skunks in Madagascar, that's going, I'm going to go with that's not Madagascar.
I was taking a video of my husband snorkeling in the ocean, and we saw this. What is that?
This is a stingray. Okay. Kind of a weak crop this time, but a couple cool animals in there to discover, and probably we're going to run into more and more fake animals, so that's exciting.
Clint,
yes?
Let's brighten your day a little bit.
Thank you.
And see some emerald tree skinks.
I'm so excited about this. All right.
Come here.
That is the perfect emerald tree skink video. That is the perfect emerald tree skink video. So sometimes people are like, well, it just wants to get out. And this shows you exactly what they want. Because every time people try to tell me what they think the motivation is for an emerald tree skink coming and playing with me, they're like, well, it just wants food. I'm like, it'll run by tongs with food on them to come play with you. Well, it just wants out. Well, for one thing, I can leave the enclosure open and they won't go anywhere unless somebody walks up there, and then they're all about it. That one jumped off onto the floor. What's the first thing it does? Runs right up her leg. They do that all the time. Like, I never worry about them getting on the ground. I'm like, other than people stepping on them. Like, if it gets on the ground, don't worry about it. Just stay where you are. It'll crawl up your leg. And they love people. That was the most emerald tree skink thing ever. Jumps out. It has its freedom. it would much rather climb up your leg and hang out with you. Because they're made of magic.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky.
Love that cover. So that, I love this. So here's the, sometimes people have watched our videos on them and they're like, are they really like that? Yeah. No, they're really like that. Like that's every time you open the enclosure during the middle of the day. In the evening or early in the morning, a lot of times they're a little less playful. But if you got your enclosure right about chest height like that, they just want to come out and play with you. And that leap, that was a really good slow motion. That's how they're going to greet you. They just want to come out and play. Because they're not real animals. They're made up. Nope, there it is. Yeah, they love crawling onto heads, but I found when they get on a head, they're quick to jump off of the head. But if you get a camera close to one, they're gonna go check that out too. They are so much fun, and so is this. This whole video has been a lot of fun. Should we do it again? As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon. The fossa is incredibly well endowed.
Wow, thanks, Clint.
And it has all over it.
What?
Yeah, no big deal.
Oh my gosh. That's terrifying.
Will, is potentially a very virile fellow. But imagine if there were like 200 Wills. Think if Will had started off by reproducing himself asexually.
I don't want to imagine.
If there were 200 Wills, we'd all chain together.
Yeah. And the next generation would be 100% related to Will. I think 200 is all it would take.
The entire world. No, hang on. That's a chupacabra. It's clearly a chupacabra.
Keep the chupacabra's name out of your mouth. Longest animal in the world?
That can't be right.
It is.
Well, I mean, that's cheating.
Is it?
Yes.
Because it's a colony?
Yes.
But they're attached to each other.
So?
Do you ever see a human centipede? For the record, I haven't seen it, but I do have a friend that was in it.
Okay. Hear me out.
Okay.
Imagine there's this amazing underground river that connects Scotland to this lake in Africa, and
so this is where Nessie goes during the.
Nessie vacations.
Yeah.
When the heat.
She snowbirds.
I hadn't even considered that.
Why not?
I don't know.
You call yourself
I feel foolish.
No. She flies.
Yeah. Okay.
Love it. Yeah, I was just, hanging out, watching this cow pee.
Yep.
As you do.
And I saw this llama deer.
It distracted me from the pee.
Yeah.
I'm recording it.
You act like you've never done it. And she's like, oh, another egg I need to get. And she goes over to get that, and suddenly all the eggs in her mouth are fertilized.
That's terrible.
I would much rather be kicked by a cassowary, honestly, than an ostrich.
Should we line that up?
Getting kicked by a... Okay, yeah, I'll take a kick from a cassowary, and you take a kick from an ostrich, and we'll compare.
We'll compare notes.
Yeah. Or maybe we should just have Coyote Peterson take both kicks.
Greatly exaggerated.
Yeah. He's just acting dead. But he really committed to the role. They let us bury him and everything. Did the whole funeral, the embalming process. It was impressive.
Wake up!
Yeah. At first, it got lifted off. And it managed to find new footing. I don't know what the plan was. If it just ends up riding a hummingbird.